Want me to say this for her?
Take notes.
There we go. Are you gonna look at the scratch? No, I should be fine.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everybody. Ready to roll. So it is 6 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And right off the bat, we've got our usual administrative work. So I'd entertain any additions or changes to the agenda anticipated. No? Okay, great. So approval of the minutes for September 9th. Has everybody had the opportunity to review those minutes?
I have one little correction.
Okay,
In the discussion of the Moscow Woods Bridge Repair Plan. Oh, where's, oh,
Doing it.
okay, great. The last, the end of that discussion, it's on page 2, 3. It just says that the Friends of the Winooski are trying to coordinate their, into their project of getting the bridge taken down, and I'm pretty sure the Friends
that should be the
are
date.
taking the dam down,
Yeah.
I actually rewrote that sentence a little bit to say Friends of Winooski are trying to coordinate the bridge repair and replacement project with the dam deconstruction project.
That's being better.
That's
good.
better.
Thank you, Anna.
You know,
Were there any other adjustments that need to be discussed? So with that, I'll entertain a motion to accept them as presented with the additions proposed by Ann or prepared by Ann, which will be integrated afterwards. Does that sound good?
Yes, so,
So, second,
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No?
can
Okay.
I ask a quick question? That
Yes.
came up as I was rereading those. Is somebody taking responsibility? We decided we're gonna appoint a monitor for the erosion control. Is somebody keeping track of all that? Because that'll come up in March when we start appointing people. I don't want
Oh.
to lose it. You remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, no, I remember. I wasn't thinking it was gonna be an official, position that would be.
Well, it was, we talked about doing it
Yeah,
sort of the way we do.
But there's always,
Pond.
yeah, we should add it to the list. So,
There's just to make sure that we do it.
yeah, I'll take that one.
Another one for Cardi.
So I'll entertain a motion to accept the board orders. So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? No. And approval of the annual Friends of Calais and Town Hall Management Agreement, which my understanding and read is that there aren't really any changes from last year. This is an annual agreement that we renew every year. Cliff, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. Hi, how's everybody doing tonight? Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yep.
Great. Yeah, just carrying over everything that we had from last year. Don't anticipate any need for changes. I don't know if all the select board members have had a chance to review. I know some of you are familiar with it from years before. So if there's any questions, I'm here to answer them. If not, the Friends, on behalf of the Friends, we would certainly appreciate renewal and moving forward with another year. And also want to talk a little bit briefly, if we have the time, with regards to plans that we have upcoming for the next year.
I'm comfortable with that.
Okay. Well, just real quick, a while back, the Friends received a very generous donation from a private individual who prefers to remain anonymous. And the intention of this donation was to provide light and sound equipment for the upstairs. After looking for a while and consulting with different companies, we believe that we have found a partner to work with, and we're going to look to engage them and add said equipment to the upstairs. But we didn't want to just, bull ahead with all of this and not act without transparency. We wanted the select board to be aware of what we were up to and what we were working on. And was wondering if the select board would indulge us and let us occasionally meet with Kari to include him in the discussions, let him know what we're doing, and more or less liaise with the select board to pass along what we're working on. And then, of course, the Friends would gladly make ourselves available to the board should there be need to have an in-depth discussion over any of these plans.
I think that is appropriate as long as Kari feels that he has the bandwidth for that. I think that sounds like a great way to keep everybody in the loop about the projects as they roll forward. Yeah.
Yeah, and in terms of purchasing that equipment, I mean, that'll be property of the Friends of the hall.
Hall, yeah.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
And also kind of would dovetail nicely because it's my understanding that Kari is now spearheading our efforts for the MERP grant monies, and these discussions can definitely dovetail. What we imagine is doing this in 2 phases. The first phase is simply going to involve obtaining the equipment and being able to utilize it when events occur that would utilize this equipment or have a need for this type of equipment. Once we get into a remodel of the upstairs, then we can look at a more permanent installation of the equipment, should that be appropriate at that time. And I don't know if any other members of the Friends are there. They might have something to add to this. Scott, I know you're there. Artie who's been working on putting together the quotes that we got, can provide more detail, but I don't believe he's arrived yet. Scott, do you have anything to add?
I think you said it very well, Cliff. Thank you. I think we probably will meet formally and look at the proposal that Artie found and vote to approve it and to spend that money. Then we'll have our hands on the equipment. And I think there's enough electrical up there to use what we get right away. But we certainly could use when MERP comes through, we could use a electrical upgrade and insulation things to try to make it a little warmer up there.
Exactly, and that's the point where we would work with what happens with the monies from the MERP grant and try to make our efforts go in concert with that. In the interim, before any of that happens, part of our plan includes bringing in Dan Cowan to evaluate the electrical grid that's available upstairs and make sure it's going to support this equipment before we even engage.
Right.
So just wanted to make everyone aware of that. I don't know if there's any questions from the board or anyone in the audience who wonders about this project.
So Carol Beatty's here. She's with Friends.
Hi, Cliff.
Hey, Carol. Oh yeah, that's something else to bring up. A side note, I also provided to Barbara, and I know she shared it with the board, a brief summary in spreadsheet form of some of the activities of events that the Friends have scheduled at the hall over the past couple of years. And we would like to formally present our very first, what would they call it? It's as part of the management agreement, the Friends agreed to give the town of Calais 20% of all revenues that are derived from rentals of the hall. And we are now in a position to present the very first check that comes from some of those rentals. It's certainly not going to move the needle much in terms of the budget, but it is nice to see that this formal arrangement is actually coming into fruition. Carol?
Yeah, I gave the check to Barbara when I came in.
Great.
Now.
Yeah.
Here too.
David has this here as well.
Hi, Cliff.
Hey, David, don't know if you have anything to add. The board appears to be on board, as it were, with our idea of interacting with Kari with regards to the AV project upstairs. And also our understanding that as the MERP grant monies possibly become available, that we move into a second phase of integrating this equipment in line with that project as well. So David, I didn't know if you had anything else to add to that?
Now that they're on board.
Okay, then don't say anything. Okay, well, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Cliff. I appreciate it. And thanks for those representing the Friends. That's a helpful update.
And thanks for the check.
And thank you for the check.
Could I ask a question?
Yes.
I want to know a little more about the MERP grant. Is that going to be for the insulation and?
I was planning on talking about it during the TA report
Oh, okay,
tonight.
I'll wait.
But yes, energy improvements is the purpose.
Great.
So if there aren't any other questions about the agreement, I'd entertain a motion to accept.
I just had one thing, moving equipment, is the equipment coming in and staying here, or is it being moved in and out for a time?
We imagine that it doesn't take up a lot of space, and we imagine being able to store it in the little closet next to the stage upstairs. It's written into the management agreement that we're allowed to store some stuff there, but it's only with the blessing of the town office because they have first dibs on that storage space upstairs. If the need arose where it took up too much space and they couldn't store what they needed to there, we'd figure something else out.
I don't believe the elevator was designed for freight. That's the only reason I'm bringing it up.
We would not require the elevator for this. It's very explicit on the elevator that it's only for using the moving of people up and down. You definitely don't move furniture, equipment, or anything like that on the elevator. We can certainly carry this equipment by hand up and down the stairs.
So Cliff, whenever you guys are ready to put that in the closet, if you could schedule that either with Tegan or myself, because we wouldn't want to store it in front of our election supplies.
Absolutely. When I was discussing this Friday at the meeting of the Friends, I let them know that that was paramount, that it not interfere or be in the way of the town office's access to anything that's in that closet. We actually imagine being able to store these things in some small cases and put them off to the side and the back so they'll be completely out of your way. But yes, we will alert you before we do anything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I actually may have a few more others, but I think I'll save those. I imagine we're going to be meeting with the Friends as part of our kind of budgeting prep. They'll be on, we did that last year. Are they on our list to meet with, I think?
No, the Friends is own 501c3 not-for-profit organization. They're not involved in the town budget at all.
We
Okay.
did meet with them at their request, but that wasn't part of the
It
budget.
wasn't part, it was kind of in that same kind of window. Okay. Well, I'll table them. They don't need to be had, or questions need to be raised now.
I
Yeah.
think certainly please.
Appreciate. So again, I'll entertain a motion to accept the agreement and sign it. I guess that we're just looking for one signature, so we need to authorize
It's got 5 signatures.
5 signatures, okay. So, a motion to accept and sign, the agreement with the town, the Friends of the Town Hall.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No? All right, thank you very much.
Yeah,
I'll
thank you,
circulate
Friends.
that. Thank you, friends.
Thank you. Take care. David will sign on behalf of the Friends, and I anticipate being back in town soon, and at which point I'll swing by the office and sign it as well.
Thank you, Cliff.
Thank you. Take care. Have a great meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks, Liz.
So next up, we have the authorization of Kari to sign the fiscal year 2025 state structures grant agreement, which was in the folder. Are there any questions about the structures grant as it's been presented? I don't think so. This is just,
That was the one for the culvert
Yeah.
on Moose Road?
Yeah,
right.
this,
Yeah.
you've seen this before.
This is just a
It's been
signature.
updated,
Yeah.
so that we have more time to execute the project, and we'll include an allocation in next year's budget. So we'll be talking about this again, but just to get things going.
Get it going. So I'll entertain a motion to approve or authorize Kari.
So moved.
A second?
Oh, second, sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No? Okay, thanks, Kari. And the next up is an approval to sign and a signature of the road grader bond certificate of completion. And that's just a piece of paperwork saying that the paperwork has been completed and will finalize the
Everything's done. except for
everything.
paying for
Yeah,
it.
exactly. So
And this is for the bond.
this is for the bond,
The
yes.
last one.
It seemed to me to be a little, we really didn't need this, but yeah. People
It's
need,
part of
people
the
need,
process.
people need what they need.
So I entertain a motion to approve and sign.
Well, Kari signed.
I signed as treasurer, but you'll need to sign.
We'll need to sign as the select board. Again,
Okay, I'll move it.
thank you. A second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No? All right, thanks. We'll circulate that at the end of the meeting and get those signed. And next up, we have a public comment period, which is set aside for 15 minutes. Is anybody here to talk about anything that does not already appear on the agenda? Yes, sir. Would you mind stating your name for
Sure.
Tegan?
So, I live on Haggett Road. And this is kind of about, two things I want to bring up. And the first one's about perceptions. So last week, graders showed up and started at the co-op and worked up Martin Road and stopped. And I'm like, but that's not all of Haggett Road. Actually, they went up Adamant, sprayed mag chloride. And so I contacted Carrie and said, what's up? Because my perception is I live on Haggett, every day I see school buses go by. And the worst section of Haggett Road is that little cut between Jim and Maureen's house and my house. It was rutted out, it's the narrowest part of the road, and it got no attention. My perception is we got school kids going in school buses. And the town doesn't care. That's perception that may not be accurate, but it's one that can be drawn from the fact that the road crew just left it. On the positive side, I had communications with Kari, and they actually came and graded today, and then,
Good.
so they didn't do any ditch work, but they graded. And then they came back later and sprayed mag chloride. But clearly that section, and we've had this discussion before in this very room about that section, being forgotten, that it's actually part of the town.
Hmm.
And as I said, my perception is I see these school buses with our kids going by, and it's the worst section of road, and we're getting no attention until it seems like I said, hey, what's going on? And then the other piece that I want to bring up is, mud season. It was really nice when Kari was sending out or posting on front page forum, what's going on with the roads. And, roads are pretty important.
Mhm.
And it just seems, from my perspective, that it might be nice to have those going year round, take an extra 5 minutes once a week and say, okay, this is what's on the docket for a road crew getting out and attending to roads here, and ditches here, and culverts. So, because I have no idea what's going on in the rest of the town, I just have my little view and I drive around.
Yeah.
Very little other than Center Road and Haggett out to Canada, and I don't cruise around a lot. So anyways, that would be a suggestion that, there be some
I appreciate that.
better communication around what's going on with the roads and the crews. They might know they're flat out and busy. It'd just be nice to know how they're busy.
Yeah, Chris, I appreciate you registering those concerns. I've been paying attention to the kind of dialogue around Haggett Road over the last couple of weeks, and that was kind of the first thing that struck me. I mean, there certainly hasn't been any deliberate effort to avoid or neglect any segment of town, and we have certainly an obligation to address all the roads at some point. And we've had a fair amount of turnover, particularly for those who do the grading in the last 2 years. So there's in part a learning curve, but what did strike me as something that I think would be really helpful for the community, now knowing that we can do it, is being more transparent about what the grading schedule looks like throughout the year.
Or mowing, you know, 'cause they can-
Yeah. So the specifics of doing or standing something like that up haven't unfolded quite yet, but we do have a new mapping resource that we've been kind of curious about whether or not we can integrate that with the website in a particular way, and so there's that's certainly on my radar and on the list of things to discuss. And more recently, we've been talking about maybe assigning somebody with the responsibility of trying to keep some of those digital pieces of information up to date throughout the year, because it was so helpful through flooding events and even through the mud season that we had, mud seasons that we've been having.
Yeah.
So I thank you for bringing that up, and thank you for the patience. Has the whole section of Haggett Road been graded at this point,
I believe
all the
so.
way through?
Brent, they got it all?
Yeah, they actually went a little bit into the next town.
I think they just missed it this year, and that probably won't happen again.
I mean,
Special trip out.
in general, I've been really impressed with the grading. I don't know why it's stood out to me more this year than other years. There seems to have been a lighter touch where it needs a lighter touch, and heavier touches to reestablish road grades in a really nice way. But I have felt like there's a lot of ambiguity about like what's being graded and when. And frankly, certainly during the busing season, that information would be helpful. So.
Yeah, I don't know if bus routes are prioritized.
I can't speak to,
For road maintenance or plowing in the wintertime, I mean.
Oh, definitely plowing, yeah. In terms of grading, I would say we're just trying to get to everything.
Yeah.
And, a couple times at least a year.
right.
So, I wouldn't necessarily say the bus is being prioritized unless it's in bad shape.
Yeah.
But anyway, about the point about updates, it just hasn't been top of mind recently. I can certainly make more elaborate.
So, but Jordan, were you saying we have we're thinking about putting that on the website as opposed to having front porch forum stuff?
Well, it could be either. I mean, I've just had a couple of conversations with the kind of the robustness of the new mapping system that we have. The one that was the mapping resource that was kind of stood up for the emergency response 2 years ago was one that we reused again for this mud season. It's kind of an unofficial resource to a certain extent, and it kind of relies on a volunteer and her expertise to keep it up to date to a certain extent. So as we were thinking about, well, that was a really nice thing to have. Is this something that we could put on the website or integrate into the website? And we can likely do something like that, but it'll require some more work. And we may be able to use this other resource for that in a more streamlined fashion. So that was the extent of that. It's not anything in particular at the moment, but it's on a list of things that we can add to the town website.
Okay.
Are there any other comments other than Chris's? We'll save the rest for the agenda items as they come through. Thank you, Chris. Excuse me, struggling with my voice. The use of right-of-way for George Road. So this is a application to perform work in the right-of-way for a water line that will be crossing George Road. Has everybody had the opportunity to review that application? And are there any questions? Is there anybody here representing the?
Juanita Nunn is the landowner and Jordan Hepburn is the project manager. I strongly suggested they be here tonight.
Okay.
By Zoom, but I don't see them. I also asked for,
The
dimensions on drawing and was told they would get it, but anyway. We have reviewed the site.
The site.
The only condition would be the typical 4 feet of depth at least.
Yeah.
And that was why they proposed an option B in case they find that they can't reach that depth with option A, which would be their preference because it's the straightest, shortest path.
And this is a seasonal water line that is
Yes.
going to service an agricultural building.
Yeah, that's right.
Did they provide, I didn't see on the application that they had like a particular start date that they were trying to get it done.
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not sure about that.
Did they provide any information about, is there gonna be a point where they're gonna have to actually stop traffic? Because they're digging a trench across the road?
Yeah,
And
I think it was
are they gonna put them?
it was less than a day. It was a matter of hours. We thought that would happen.
And so is there some provision for diverting, where is it? Remind me, it's not on George Road, it's on,
No, it is on George.
it is on George Road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a problem? Do people need to be told to go around if it's gonna be a couple of hours?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure exactly. We have to evaluate that.
I remember when we did Lewis Porter's, he actually put signs out at the beginning and end of Martin Road, just to tell people that it would be closed for these 4 hours or whatever it was. And
Okay,
I think the road crew helped him a little bit with that. But
okay. So that could be a condition as appropriate warning.
Signage.
yeah,
Yeah, because you can go around.
If it were a heavily trafficked road, we could even set up an alert, through the state. I don't think that's really
it wouldn't
necessary.
hurt to put something on Front Porch Forum,
Yeah.
a day or two ahead so people know.
Certainly.
So with the additions of those conditions, is it possible to entertain a conditional approval? And I guess my conditional approval would be on the documentation of of the, of the feet from the center line of their, curb cut, their driveway. You know, that's something that I've been harping on quite a bit. This application does ask for those delineations, you know, those feet to be noted, and there was kind of sparse detail while it was fairly well represented, like, by landmark. We really need to be documenting where these things are being buried in the roads. So if they can get that information added to their drawing, then we can proceed. I guess so that would be my condition, is that we
You
can,
wanna see it before.
before work is performed, I want to make sure that those are added on there. And maybe start getting a little more direct about making sure that that's a requirement.
But in terms of the application itself, John looked at it and has no problems with it. When I
Correct.
saw Neil didn't. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's similar to a power line, it's gonna be suited that.
Yep. So with that, I guess that's a conditional approval of the entertaining a motion to conditionally approve relative to the additions of signage and posting about road closure on George Road to go on Front Porch Forum prior to work commencing, and also the submission of linear dimensions from the center line of the driveway to the drawing that was submitted before work commences.
I would say sufficient to
Yeah, sufficient to locate
locate, for the town to locate where
where
the
the
infrastructure.
water line is going to be run.
Okay.
Thank you, Craig.
Yeah.
So if everybody agrees with that, I'd
So-
entertain a motion. Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Moving to the Moscow Woods Bridge Repair Award. So we have a proposal to repair the bridge to review, and a potential action of accepting a proposal under an emergency repair, or as an emergency repair.
So we've
So
talked about this a
we've-
couple
yeah.
times in the past few months. Minor, the engineer has been recommending full replacement of this bridge
Right.
for quite some time. We have chosen a path to do a temporary repair until we can line up the funding for a full replacement. We were awarded this particular grant that helped pay for this back in 22. And it expires in December, so that's why we're thinking about this as an emergency situation. We've gotten one bid. The contractor says we can get it done in October or November, so that's good, that's really good news. The grant is 90%, with 10% match from the town, with a $90,000 maximum, so we'll come in well below that. We've already spent about $7,000 on design. Yes, definitely recommending approval so we can get this work done and access the grant, and it would need, since we only have the one bid, it would be needed to be done under the emergency provision of the purchasing policy.
And it's is it for footings? I wasn't, you said four things were gonna be galvanized, delivered and installed?
Yeah, to reinforce what, I forget the name of the term, but the base of the bridge.
Not, okay. Yes. Don't know.
And Toby looked at what they're planning and it looks satisfactory.
Yeah, it's based on our engineer's design.
Yeah, okay.
We've done the more extensive repair, and then we asked for,
Right.
what's the short-term repair that will get us through.
And
until
how
we can do
long
the
will this go to be last?
Right.
It's a temporary emergency repair. How long will it be? It'll last
I think
until,
we're in the neighborhood of 5 years as opposed to, we're looking at like 20.
Will we have to close the bridge while they're doing it?
I don't know. Good question.
And if so, for how long? That's, That's a major.
I'll certainly find that out, be part of the execution of the project.
Yeah, okay.
So it sounds like it would be most appropriate to, consider this as two separate motions, is that right? We have to kind of make the declaration of it being an emergency situation, and then, make a decision on, accepting the single, bid that we received for the work. Does that sound accurate, Kari?
Yeah, I think that's
Well,
reasonable.
couldn't you just say, so we're making a finding that,
We are,
it's in, or maybe you have the wording, do you?
I don't have the word.
Okay, let me see, the select board finds that, this is an emergency situation because the Moscow Woods Road is in need of immediate repair, but we're unable to do a permanent repair. Therefore, we declare this an emergency and we accept the bid for $20,000.
You might have to start that again, I'm not Rose.
Sorry.
Well, is there some ordinance language that tells us what we have to find?
But it's in our purchasing,
Because they,
but,
oh,
yeah.
it's serious? It's our ordinance?
It's our rules, it's our purchasing.
It's our purchasing policy.
Town purchasing policy requires what?
I think it's a finding of,
I have plans that this project is eligible to be counted as an emergency situation because the bridge is in need of immediate repair,
Yeah.
but.
I would say that it qualifies for an emergency purchase.
Yeah.
Under
Yes.
our purchasing policy.
Okay.
And you don't have to put this in minutes, but because a delay in such repair would endanger persons or property.
And that's.
That's what the
from
policy says.
mhm.
It does.
So a motion, to accept that finding, I guess.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. And with that, I entertain a motion to accept the proposal to, perform the repair.
I move to accept the bid.
And authorize, do we have to sign it? Does somebody have to sign it? Authorize Kari to sign it?
I forget what I wrote.
Let's see.
Yeah, that's an authorization for Kari to sign it.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll work.
Okay, so a motion to accept the bid that was received for the repair for the total of 20,000. What was the?
800, I believe.
800, thank you. And
580.
520,580.
Increase my font size.
Isn't that right?
Yes,
Like that.
Yes, you are right.
and authorization for Kari to sign it and accept the bid.
Has that been moved?
No.
Okay, yeah, I'll
Thank
move
you.
it then.
A second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No, thank you. And moving forward to the planning commission, we're a little ahead of schedule. Oh, we have a question from David.
Yeah, do you have the name of the contractor?
Yeah, it's,
DMS Manufacturing and Fabrication.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, machining, sorry, machining and
Yeah.
fabrication.
Machining. All right, Rachel? Would you like to come to the front row? This might be a little easier for those on Zoom to pick up the conversation. So tonight, we'll be reviewing a portion of the town plan, specifically on a discussion about the housing segment of the town plan. So we've been kind of systematically working our way through with the planning commission to review draft additions or draft segments of the town plan, and in preparation for considering and accepting the entire revision. And this has been, I think, working out pretty well. A nice way to work through the conversations in part. And so tonight we've scheduled time to go through that with Rachel. So would you like to start with an intro or a 30,000-foot view intro?
I can do that. I won't start with the document. Let me just kind of back up even further.
Sure.
Because a lot of what this is gonna be about is about developing housing in our town and housing that is affordable. And I know that we've had some conversations with folks who've come to the planning commission, and I think there have been conversations here about what do we mean by affordable housing and when is housing affordable? So I just want to kind of level set a little bit on that concept before I jump into what we've actually drafted.
Mm-hmm.
So historically, housing has been considered affordable if the household pays less than 1/3 of their income, their gross income, on housing. And in Vermont, we have subsidized housing and we have what I would call capital letters affordable housing, right? So subsidized housing is for low income folks, or older people or people with disabilities. And generally it means that their income is going to be below 60% of the area median income, or even lower than that. And in those situations, the tenant generally pays less than, this is almost exclusively rental, less than 30% of their income goes to rent, up to 30%. And then they have what we now call a housing choice voucher, what people used to call Section 8, and that's what pays the rest. If those are operating in Calais, those would be through the Vermont State Housing Authority. That would be our housing authority. And so most people are using those to rent a market rent apartment or home. Then we have affordable housing, and there are both rental and homeownership affordable housing opportunities in Vermont. These are market units, or would be market units, but they are offered below market rate, generally because there have been some kinds of investments in them, low-income housing tax credits, home tax credits, other kinds of federal investments that make them able to be sold or rented at the market rate. And these will also still have income limits, but they tend to be higher. It might be somewhere between 80% of area median income all the way up to potentially 120% of area median income. And for that, Down Street is the local community trust. They are the ones that now are managing the apartments at the East Calais General Store. And those would be considered low income housing at this point. So that's kind of, I wanted to just kind of level set. So when I'm talking about housing that's affordable, I'm talking about housing where the people living there are paying less than 1/3 of their income, or up to 1/3 of their income on that housing. And when I'm talking about affordable housing, I'm talking about housing that has those kinds of investments in it.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So, jumping into the housing section, hopefully you all got a copy of our current draft. Yes, okay, great. So we've kind of kept the basic structure that we've had in this section in the past and cut some things and added some things. And I think that's what we've done with both sections. So in terms of current conditions, we do now have, previously we had 3 village districts, we now have 4 village districts. So East Calais, North Calais, Maple Corner, and Adamant are all categorized now as village districts. And then we have some background data. Right now what's in here is census data. John McCullough was able to give me the listers information in terms of how they have counted the number of houses. I think that's gonna be more accurate.
Mm-hmm.
It's also lower than these numbers from the census in terms of the number of total homes in our town. So that will change a little bit. I can actually I can tell you that right now. Oh, let's do that. Right now, they have 318 houses categorized as residential more than 5 acres. 387 categorized as residential less than 5 acres. 33 landed mobile homes, 1 remaining unlanded mobile home. 73 seasonal homes with more than 5 acres and 14 seasonal homes with less than 5 acres. Although John did say that some of those seasonal homes may actually be capable of year-round use. They're just not used year-round currently. So that gets us to a total of 826 residential units, which is quite a bit lower than what the census thinks we have at 807.
And that includes the 87 seasonal.
That includes the seasonal.
The vacant housing unit?
So we think the reason that vacant housing units are so high for the census is because they put the seasonal houses into the vacant unit.
Like double.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I've added in here some updated information from the every 5-ish years from a housing needs assessment. And so you'll see a couple of spots where we still have some redlining, because that's kind of newer information. We haven't completely vetted it yet. The median value of our homes has gone up pretty significantly from the 2010 to 2020 census. By the median has gone up $88,400 in 10 years. We are able to pull from the census their estimates of folks who are paying more than 1/3 of their income on mortgage and less than 1/3. Combining households both with and mortgages, about 25% of our homeowners are considered housing burdened according to the census. So they're paying 30% or more of their total incomes towards their housing costs. On the rental side, the median rent according to the census, and I just keep saying according to the census because their accuracy is, they have big margins of error for a town of our size. But they say that our median rent is $1,195. And approximately 26% of our renters were estimated to be paying between $2,000 and $2,500 of rent per month in our town.
Right.
So that would indicate that 60% of folks in Calais who are renting are either rent burdens, or they're paying more than 30%, or severely rent burdened. They're paying more than half their income towards their housing costs. And we have challenges that we are dealing with that are contributing to these rising housing costs. There is, of course, a statewide housing shortage. And VHFA's housing needs assessment estimates that Washington County will need between 2,289 and 3,385 homes between 2025 and 2029 to meet the need that we have. And that includes resolving homelessness, as well as having the capacity for other folks to move to our community. And to reduce the vacancy rate so that we have a healthier housing market. So generally, Calais is 2.8% of Washington County. That would mean adding between 64 and 95 homes in Calais.
A year.
Total for over those next 5 years. So that would be 19 homes a year, which is significantly more than the about 2 per year we are currently adding. Okay. Across the state, short-term rentals are impacting vacancy rates. That doesn't seem to have been something that has significantly changed in Calais, although we certainly do have some homes that are listed for short-term rentals in our town. And homelessness really has exploded in our county, or at least our ability to know how many people are homeless has exploded. in our county, so 446 individuals were identified as homeless during 2023's point in time count. So every January, one night a year, every people volunteer, they go out and count all the homeless people in our area. So 446 in 2023, 963 a year later. And because of changes at the state level in terms of programs to serve homeless people, more folks are getting kicked out of being sheltered homeless and are becoming unsheltered homeless as we speak. So that is more dangerous, more likely to increase our healthcare costs, all sorts of different things. So cost of housing is a challenge. The overall housing crisis is a challenge. The workforce and supply chain in order to develop new housing is a challenge. And regulatory requirements can be challenges as well, in terms of developing housing. So a lot of our previous town plan was focused on updating our zoning ordinance in order to address some of these issues. That's done. We have updated our zoning ordinance. So we have a chart in here that I put together that shows what kinds of housing are permitted uses or conditional uses depending on which zoning district folks are in. And it's, since that only was approved at the March town meeting, it's a little early to say if that is having any impact on development in Calais. So if you go down to the goals section, which I feel like is kind of the key part of each of these sections we have, if we want to be part of the solution of solving the housing crisis here in Calais, that would mean adding up to 19 net units of housing each year. And based on our experience of just like having people develop housing because they buy land and want to move in, that's not gonna happen. And so the goal that I've proposed here is that we engage landowners, private developers, and in particular, affordable housing developers, in order to find the places where we could develop up to 19 units of housing each year. I think that would also involve the select board, the emergency management committee, the planning commission, working with the regional planning commission or some other outside expert to identify how our flood resilience needs and our housing sector need to come together to find the right spots to be able to develop some of that housing. And I think that it's possible that we will find that it will be difficult to continue developing in our village centers. And so consideration of whether we need to create a new village center, village district, or new town center may be something that needs to be on the table if we want to continue to have kind of the densely packed village and then sparsely impacted outlying areas.
Or expand them. There are a couple of areas in the state where, relative to the Act 250 changes, they, rather than like a village center that had been defined in a particular historic main street in a small town, but didn't necessarily expand outside that very much. They've expanded along another corridor to help kind of promote or.
Yeah, and so I think looking at whether the area that counts for each of our village centers is still the right area or if those should be expanded. That's part of that consideration. And I just think because of the flooding we've experienced, we have to look at it with that lens as well.
For sure.
Excuse me, your goal number 1 says add 95 net units per year. I think you
You
said
may have an outdated version. It's 95 over the next 5 years. So 19 per year is what that would.
That's the one I got today, so okay.
Okay,
It should be 19, all
it
right.
should be 19.
Rachel, do you want us to interrupt as you're talking, or should we wait till you're done? and then
I'm
we'll
just
talk?
about done.
We'll wait then.
So the other ones here really are around, looking at, are there local incentives we can provide for accessory dwelling units and development of 2-family or multifamily units? Whether that is through connecting folks up with the Vermont rental program that lets people do rehabs of property to get them online as rentals or something that we do more locally. And then last is to engage with our legislators to address the statewide policy changes that we may need in order to be part of the solution to the housing crisis. So those are the goals that we've identified at this point, and I would love feedback, both on kind of the background information as well as the potential goals we have here.
Thank you, Rachel. Right off the bat, I think, I really appreciate the effort to work with the zoning administrator, to try to get the data of Calais, because that has long been kind of a frustration of mine, is that the data that is driven by just census data is just really not that accurate. The margin for error is so high, and I think it would be great if we could commit ourselves as a community to tracking those numbers a little more internally. And I don't think it would be very difficult.
Yeah, John was actually able to give me the sheets from 2013 to this year.
That's awesome.
So now we'll have a chart in there that shows those patterns and the time. And I can turn those into graphs too, if people prefer graphs over charts.
I think that's really, really helpful, and really relevant context to be, for folks to be looking at, in the community. So thank you. I have some other comments, but I'll save those if others want to ask some questions.
I love these goals. But really, how's it gonna happen? Do you have thoughts about an action plan, short of Gus Seelig quitting his job and?
Yeah, I don't think Gus Seelig's planning on quitting his job, nor am I. So, I mean, I think that's a great question, and it's something that we've been wrestling with on the planning commission. Do we identify, like, in the past, we've identified who's responsible for achieving these goals, and then we still don't achieve these goals, and there's not really an accountability method.
Sure.
So we've kind of been pulling that out. But in terms of like how I actually think we can achieve these goals, I think that in housing, this may actually be a place where the planning commission and the select board are kind of uniquely suited to partner up in terms of, for example, inviting someone from downstreet out here to talk to us about what are the opportunities in Calais that we could be working with them on. Or, you know, being more engaged with Vermont State Housing Authority. I don't have any idea. I don't know if there are any people using housing choice vouchers in Calais, but I do know we have incredibly rent burdened tenants. And so how can we make sure that those folks are on the list? We have a town services officer, or we're supposed to. How are we making sure those people are on the wait list? So, you know, they may be on a wait list for 5, 10, 15 years, depending on what priority they fit under, but I'd rather those folks be on a wait list than not be on a wait list.
Well, and so I think that to kind of circle back and pull on that thread a little bit, because you had raised the question of whether or not we want to maybe look at doing this on the local level and try to figure out these incentives on a more local level, or do we just want to be more active and vocal at trying to pull state resources through? And in my somewhat limited, I guess, experience, I think those state resources are amazing. The need is significant across the state, so they're very competitive and the wait lists are very long. And they also generally come with obligations for qualification that can be challenging. So if you apply for a grant that helps rehabilitate an energy inefficient house, that's great as a homeowner, but then the state has very specific objectives about who they would like that to be available to, and not that isn't a misguided objective, but I think that there ends up being a disconnect with rural, like how do you do that in rural communities? Because now you're having to prioritize that unit to somebody who is then great if you can get them into that unit, but how are they going to access some other public services that they likely need, like transportation and other infrastructure needs? So from my perspective, there seems to be like this big gap in just like the logistics of applying those types of incentives. And so I started thinking about whether or not we as a community want to look at, again, revisiting those village centers for just to kind of help wrap everybody's mind around that, or I'm surprised that there aren't more case studies for rural communities, or research that's being done by CVRP, to talk about like creating incentives for subdivision or looking at ADU development, similar to what's been recently pushed through.
Yeah, so
For
CVRP
village centers.
did actually have an ADU grant program. I think
Yeah.
the application deadline has passed for that though. And so I think they have had some things. I do think we would likely be more actively communicating with our folks on CVRPC in order to make sure that Calais is front and center when they're thinking about some of these options. And kind of the unique needs. And I think, you mentioned transportation, right? And one of the things that's been a major theme as we've been rewriting the town plan has been how completely interconnected every section of the plan really is to every other section. It's like, well, do we put this in housing? Do we put this in economic development? Do we put this in recreation? It goes in all of them, right? And I think this is exactly one of those, right? Which is, we can't just put housing in a field somewhere if the people that could then benefit from it can't then leave that field of housing, right? And so how do we work with Green Mountain Transit when they're already talking about cutting back lines to add a line that would come up through Route 14, right? Or up the county road or wherever it was that made sense, depending on where we might be able to work with an affordable housing developer to add affordable housing into our town.
One of the other ones that I've been just kind of noodling on, and this may be way premature, so please nobody hold me accountable or throw it back in my face, but so how do we incentivize people to promote development in areas that we have town regs that really well define development patterns that we want and the values as a community that we have and how we want to see that development happening, but it doesn't necessarily, that just gives us a way to say no. It doesn't necessarily give us too many ways to say yes.
Yeah.
And so often, if you are somebody looking to move into a community, you don't have much choice about where you get to choose that opportunity to either build a house, move into an apartment that's affordable, et cetera, et cetera. So can we pull at the thread a little bit of how do we incentivize people to consider subdivision or ADU development in town centers or village centers?
Yeah.
And does that come in a form of a temporary tax incentive or program that we create for current property owners to say, listen, maybe consider subdividing that parcel that you have in a village center, to not necessarily accommodate 5 units, but if we can add 3 or 4 units in the village centers that are, 2-bedroom apartments that, share curb cuts in the way that we want them to share curb cuts, et cetera, et cetera. Can we structure a tax incentive as a community that we find acceptable to help promote those subdivisions be made? And if they're made, then they're more likely to be sold or built on. And it seems like we only have so many mechanisms, but I haven't seen too many of those types of programs or incentives be created around Vermont. I've heard of them in other areas, but I haven't seen too many of them around Vermont.
Yeah.
Outside of commercial space, they do that a lot in the commercial space, but not so much in the
Well, one of the
residential.
things I'd like to see us explore, I mean, there are lots of studies that show that if you build the sewer line, they will come.
Okay, so
That's a limiting factor in our villages.
Definitely.
There's lots of studies that show you run a sewer line along Kent Hill Road, you're gonna get lots of buildings on Kent Hill Road.
So this is actually one of the things that I've been trying to explore a little bit more. I have a good friend who runs the new Leahy Center at UVM, that has like 5 years to give away all this money. And apparently wastewater is one of the things they've really been studying because it's so huge. And she reports, and I have gotten a little bit more information about this, but have not had a chance to really read and process it yet. But there are new technologies that are allowing for more shared septic systems, which is not the same as adding sewer, but does potentially reduce the per unit cost of putting in a wastewater
Yeah,
system.
we should have a conversation about that, because I was just reading about one in particular that like, that it acts as. It can later then be hooked up to a municipal sewer system, so you have a very flexible system that helps redirect a lot of the wastewater challenges of individual septic systems. And then can later be infrastructure that can be tied into a municipal sewer line.
We often talk about additional tasks that Kari clearly has time for. And so I think one of the kind of overall recommendations that we will have is essentially to have like a full-time grants applier, somebody who's searching for grants, applying for grants, able to help us manage grants. Because we do miss out on so much because we just don't have the capacity as volunteers to apply for all sorts of stuff. And clearly, as I said, Kari has plenty of time to add 6 different tasks to his list every day.
And again, it comes to this like disconnect in the funding, and you know, that it's great to apply the grants and there's huge money being put towards these projects, but often they're being distributed with like, you know, 1-year application periods. And you know, there's a push right now for shovel-ready projects, and it's just like, how many people can we turn around to in the community to say, oh, I've got a shovel-ready 5-unit the communal sewer or wastewater program. And so, you know, there's a lot of work to be done, but it almost seems like there's gonna need to be a group of individuals focused on having those concepts fleshed out and designed for the grants.
So we have a conservation commission, we don't have a housing commission.
Yeah.
I don't think that we're a town that needs a housing authority. I don't think we're about to start having, you know, our own public housing building, but it does make me wonder if one of the ways that we would be able to have more focus on solving this would be for us to have a housing and conservation commission. I wonder where that idea comes from. That can give attention to both pieces of how we use our land.
So I'd like to open it up to the public or anybody online if there are any questions for Rachel or comments. No, oh, sorry, Barbara.
Yeah. Thanks for all that good work. Forgive me if I misunderstood. Did I hear you say that we have a town service officer?
I believe we're supposed to have a town service officer.
We don't, because the previous select board eliminated that position years ago.
Optional?
Do you remember when that was? I think the last one was Mary Ann Miller. You might know her.
I do.
It was eliminated years ago.
That used to be a required position under state statute.
Yeah.
That may have changed at some point.
Okay, so
Yeah, I think it was eliminated, and I think the rationale was, there's so many state agencies or access to state agencies readily available that people could avail themselves to the positions.
Yeah.
But I do recall.
I do know it was eliminated. I couldn't remember the reasoning, so I don't know if that's something that you are wanting to make a recommendation that they reinstate that position.
I mean,
My memory is that Mary Ann rarely got called.
she rarely got calls. My understanding is when she got calls, somebody was facing a tax sale. And so it was like, oh, this person may be in financially dire straits. And that's kind of too late to necessarily be able to connect someone up with all the resources that could have been used to prevent that. So it may not be that that's the solution so much as having a liaison at Capstone, the Community Action Agency for our town, so that, you know, there's some communication with the people who they should be calling, right? If they need help with some of these things like weatherization or access to transportation or rent assistance, all those sort of things.
So I had a second one.
Yes, please.
Which is, so would you describe or define affordable housing being 30% or less of gross income? Specific to homeowners. What if they have paid off their mortgage?
Yeah,
And where does that fit in? Because I see
yeah.
all this paperwork that comes in for Tegan to record how often people are getting discharged of mortgage because they paid it off. So
Paid it off.
where does that fit into all these numbers?
Yeah, so I think I ended up, so for homeowners who still have a mortgage, their estimated median monthly housing cost is $2,093. For our approximately 270 homeowners without a mortgage, their estimated median monthly housing cost is $755. So obviously, you pay off your mortgage, your housing cost goes down. It doesn't go away completely because you're still paying your taxes and paying your utilities and all that kind of stuff. And then combined the homeowners with and without mortgages, 155 households, around 25% of homeowners are contributing 30% or more of their incomes towards housing costs. So I don't have the breakdown in terms of what I summarized here, but I do know the census did break it down between those two groups.
Okay.
And I think one of the things about people who paid off their mortgages is, takes you 30 years to pay off your mortgage, you're maybe more likely to be at that point on a fixed income because you're retired, so your income is lower, and so even though your homeownership cost is now lower, it still is maybe more than a third of your budget.
But we also have a lot of trust fund babies.
We do have,
Well,
we do have some trust fund.
there's some. Yeah, that kind of raises an interesting point, because right now you have home prices and you have individuals who might be living in them because they're later in their years and they have completed the payment of their mortgage. But now that number is going to get exacerbated as those housing units then get sold to the next generation of owners, who are then going to absorb much higher costs associated with purchasing their houses. So, so, you know, I've heard anecdotally, I'll come right back to you. I've anecdotally heard that, you know, maybe we don't need to add as many houses as we feel like we think we need to add, because we have an aging population who will be, you know, who will be, you know, through attrition, I guess, will provide opportunity for more people to move into the community, but
Staring into my grave?
no.
So I think,
But, you know, I don't think that that's a complete answer. And so the one last bit that I think for this cost of housing analysis, that we've identified a need to build new houses, and what we don't entirely accomplish there is the cost to actually build houses, which is harder data to get out of the zoning administrator.
yeah.
Because we don't
Right, I
have
mean,
the
I can
same
speak to my own
certifications.
experience looking at trying to build a
Right,
house and being
yeah.
like, oh, it's actually less expensive to buy this one house that's on the market. But yeah, no, I mean, and the couple of points that I would pull out of that, one is there's no senior housing in Calais. Or communal or congregate housing in Calais. So if people wanna age in Calais, they're gonna stay in their homes, even if they may become quote unquote overhoused, right?
Hmm.
Because you're done raising kids and you still have a house with enough room for your kids too. And so that's another thing that I think engaging with Downstreet about, is there room in Calais? I mean, Cabot now has an affordable senior housing home for, I think there's like 8 or 10 units, I can't remember. Is there room in Calais for that? Do we have folks who are interested in being able to downsize from the big house that they raised their family in and still stay in our town, right? Rather than having to move to Montpelier or Barrie or somewhere else, and have extra support and aging in place. And so I think that's also a piece of it. But yes, you're right, the entry cost, I think we have to admit, the entry cost to Calais is not affordable.
No.
If you look at what's on the market right now, there are 2 houses for sale under $250,000, 2 between $250,000 and $500,000, 7 between 500,000 and $1 million. And we have 2 houses on the market in Calais right now between $1 and $2 million.
Which, and I think that also speaks to, I saw a recent kind of study, but it was really more of a marketing piece that was coming from a realtor. So look at the affordable opportunities in Calais, and it was talking about houses that were sold under $300,000, and 2/3 of them were camps.
Yeah.
And so if you're only affordable structure dwelling is a seasonal residence that's going to come with the restrictions of not being able to be converted, and there is a rationale for that for sure. That puts a lot of pressure on those camps for people trying to move into the community from outside of the community. Jennifer, you had a comment you wanted to register.
This is a national problem. The older people who they have nowhere to go. There's nowhere for them to sell. And as a younger person whose children have now fledged, there's nowhere for me to go because there's nowhere for me to buy that's smaller. And I would have to refinance. I have a fantastic interest rate. Like that's outside. The Calais can't solve that problem. But I think just, as a homeowner and listening to this, opening up a conversation or just having some sort of dialogue about what sort of incentives or what you are allowed to do. Like as a homeowner, I'm not really sure what I'm allowed, what a accessory dwelling rules are. Maybe having.
You can have one.
But
you could have one.
Yeah. So I think that might be just a great, very casual way to open up a conversation that could trigger 10 people of realizing that they do have the right situation that could create housing.
Thank you.
Sure, like you said, you can have one, but in the East Calais Village, we're limited by the number of hookups we can have based on our water system. So even 2 people ask for ADUs and said, we don't have any hookups that we can provide according to state statute, or not statute, but until we have a bigger system or the state grants us more, we can't have an ADU added or anything in the East Calais water system.
That goes across the board. I mean, if I wanted to build more bedrooms on my land, I'd have to upgrade my septic system.
Well, thank you. That was a really good conversation. It's one that I enjoy having.
I just feel we need to find more ways to say yes.
Yeah.
So find more ways to say yes to
I
things.
think it's more than that, Bill. I think we have to find ways to incentivize people because.
And to connect with resources and to, I want to second Rachel's idea of the housing commission.
Well, and to kind of pull it all together, really, I think what I've really appreciated the planning commission doing in their approach is that they've kind of unpacked the way that previous plans have been written with to-dos for very specific groups. This is an aspirational guiding document for all of the bodies of the town and anybody who is engaging and helping to contribute to the town. And so what I like about pulling some of that out is it really opens up the charge to everyone. So whether that's the select board, I mean, you're setting the goals, but it's the select board, it's the planning commission, the DRB, the conservation commission. We all have a role in participating in achieving these goals in each of the sections. And to your point, Rachel, you start pulling at the threads of any one section and you're right back to the same conversations. And I think the governor has said as much, the conversation always comes back to housing right now. That is our acute challenge. So, I will readily admit we're not going to solve the problem tonight. I think it'd be interesting to have the conversation with the planning commission about how do we achieve these goals or work towards these goals after the town plan is written, and what are some of the charges to come out of this? And does that mean having a conversation between planning and conservation to see how we can tackle both goals through some collaboration there? I don't have an answer, but I think those are all conversations worth pursuing.
Yeah, I'm expecting, because we do have land use coming up pretty soon, and I know that the Conservation Commission has some ideas about what they want in that section.
Sure.
That we certainly want to hear from them.
Great.
So I think that will happen, and I think in terms of coming together with Select Board and Planning Commission, after we finish drafting the town plan sounds great for doing that. Until then, it's kind of hard to think about how we actually operationalize some of these things
Yeah.
in terms of our own work, because
Are you still on schedule to have a draft by November?
we are doing our very best. In special meetings, so that we're doing 3 meetings a month instead of 2, in
Wow.
order to have you a draft by November. So,
Thank you.
tonight, I'll be at planning commission tomorrow night. So, yeah, we're doing our best.
If you could work in on some of the building or land purchase price data in there from John somehow, I think that would be, I
Okay,
do think that these documents can also be a good reflection of the time. And I have in many of these conversations, felt like just everybody isn't working with the same information. And it seems like we have some of that pretty locally accessible. So thank you.
yeah, John may not actually have the cost of building,
No,
but he has everybody who has gotten a permit for building, so we can reach out. to
and then
those
we'll
folks.
have like market values roughly assessed relative to, so we may have to put an asterisk on that, but it's certainly no worse than the census data. So thank you. I want to be sensitive. We're running 5 minutes behind. No, we're 5 minutes. Yeah, right. And next up on the agenda is a dialogue, an initial dialogue with the DRB with Willa and Rachel and Scott and those from the DRB who are here to chime in. So.
I'm gonna let Willa take the hot seat though.
So I guess frame the conversation a little bit. We've been meaning to kind of carry on the conversation with the DRB and specifically carry on the last conversation about what the DRB needs and some of the challenges that the DRB has been experiencing in the present environment that we're in, and some of the applications that have come through. There's been a lot of changes and resources around the town and tools that we have, and there's been turnover. So part of what we wanted to kind of invite is a pretty open dialogue about what the challenges have been for the DRB and how the DRB is feeling like we might be able to help make some commitments to whether it's having representation on the DRB that is adequately skilled to address the complicated applications, or quite literally just access to training and making sure that there's a budget for training, or digital resources for documentation or document review. We want to hear all of it. And then we are scheduled to have that another kind of carry on of this conversation. The 13th or the 14th, the 14th. So with that, if I'll turn it over to you, Willa, to touch on a few things.
And then obviously Rachel and Scott may want to chime in. So I was thinking in terms of recent challenges, I will just say we have a fairly new board with not a lot of experience. And as the chair since March or April or whatever, I'll say it's been a steep learning curve for me. It's one thing to be a member, and then it's another to become the chair and really have to understand what you're doing. So,
You disagree, is Jordan?
No, I don't disagree at all.
And, we are a very collegial and resourceful group, so and we think we've been doing fine, but it's not easy. I think because we have vacancies, that makes it harder. We have to get 4. So as you know, we're shy of 1 regular member and 2 alternates. And an issue that Scott brought up, he calls himself interim clerk, but I just call him clerk. Is it's very difficult to participate in a hearing, when it's a quasi-judicial hearing. Really want to be engaged and participate, when you're also taking the minutes. So that when we speak more formally, we have a meeting on the 7th where we'll be talking as a group about budget ideas. But one that we know we would be bringing is a request for support to have a paid recording secretary so that the clerk can actually participate in the hearings, not necessarily, administrative meetings. So we've been talking a lot about training. We've been looking at resources. We've talked to the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. We're trying to get a reference on a training they can provide us that's about $250. We have various resources. Brian Boyd from Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission has said he would come and give us some more informal training, map resource. But we have been hesitant to sort of launch that until we have new members. We feel like why not do it when we have a full complement? So I think our immediate priority really is the recruitment for new members. And I know, Anne, you had drafted a recruitment notice that Barbara had sent to Jordan and me that I think could be a good starting point. But we talked in, I guess it was our August DRB meeting. And so I just wanted to share the points that we had agreed, and we had a full, everyone was there. So we think that it's important that people have some familiarity, can't say that word today, with regulations or laws, just how things work. Willingness to learn and become familiar with our zoning regulations, which is not, is a bit of a daunting task, frankly. It's clear, but it's a dense document. Commit to participate and engage in the DRB and be respectful to all parties. And I remember being asked this by the previous select board members, being comfortable with making difficult decisions that others might not agree with. So those was criteria we thought were important for DRB members to have. And, the DRB members are willing to help recruit, interested to hear more about what the select board wants. And then I just personally had a few ideas about an application process, which I'm not sure if the board has discussed yet, but I think when I was expressed interest, I spoke with Anne, who was then the chair. I think that's important that applicants speak, with the chair, or if the chair is not available, another experienced DRB member. I think it would be good to have, read the first article of the zoning regulations, just to sort of put your toe into the document, start to have a sense of what is out there. Perhaps watch, we now record the hearing, so you can watch a recording, or at least part of the recording, get the flow and the sense that these are formal quasi-judicial proceedings. And then read a couple decisions, which I think really lay out really what you're doing in making a decision. And speaking of a decision, I have.
We have one?
Have one.
Yay.
For you, Barbara.
Oh, good.
So those are my sort of prepared notes here, but
That sounds like what we talked about.
I think, I don't know, Scott or Rich, anything you would add?
Fortunate to have Willow as chair. You've done wonders in the years you've been there, and we are a good collegial group.
Well, I reinforce that for sure. I've enjoyed the dialogue with Willa through the last few months and the rest of the board. Communication is really critical, and often these are hard conversations to kind of wrestle through. And certainly in my experience with the tenure of the last couple of years on the select board, it's so critical that that kind of collegial dialogue can be had, and enough openness for folks to feel like they can express concerns, differing opinions. We have so much work to do as a town. And we're such a small community. I think we are a very talented community. I sometimes get concerned about being able to fill all of the positions for all of the different boards and support the various initiatives and doing so in a way that provides opportunity for like diverse representation and views and experience, frankly. And one of the things I think I'll throw on the table for consideration would be a little bit of a dialogue around the number of DRB board members or the size of the DRB and whether it makes sense to go down to a 5-member board with more alternates to provide flexibility in scheduling or to provide space for, I really like the idea, given the quasi judicial needs or role, but like the need for very good note-taking and very consistent documentation of the meetings and applications. If doing that then affords us the opportunity to put people in those roles, or just assign formal roles. Does anybody have an opinion about that kind of approach or strategy? I mean, we have really big committees and I know just from my own personal experience, wanting to participate in all of these meetings gets really hard. As somebody who's actively participating in it. So it really kind of just, the only people who can participate in all of those or serve in those roles are people who have an abundance of time. And that's
No,
hard.
I don't think anybody on the DRB has an abundance.
No, right.
So my initial reaction is part of why having a bunch of people on the DRB can make sense is to share decision writing responsibilities. They are not always super fast decisions to write, and so having, Willa take one, and I take one, and Scott take one, and Gabrielle take one, or whatever can be helpful in terms of that can be as much or more time than the actual hearing.
Right.
I think the other thing about making the group smaller is then do we have harder time making quorum to be able to have our hearings, right? There was one last year when Ryan was still chair where I had been planning to be there and then my dog got quilled by a porcupine at Ann's house. Which Ann didn't know that because she wasn't there. But all of a sudden I was like, do I need to like leave my dog at the vet and come to the DRB meeting? And fortunately we had enough people coming that we were not gonna be without a quorum if I stayed with her, but like things come up in people's lives. And so having a deep bench, I actually think is helpful in terms of making sure that we can schedule meetings on time, within what the statute requires and get decisions out on time. So I would be a little reluctant to shrink, but that's kind of a gut thinking out loud reaction. I don't know what it's got.
Right now, the rules, you adopt your own rules, right?
Right.
So.
Statute says we adopt our
Right.
rules.
Do they allow for the alternates to fill in throughout, partially through the decision process, or do you have to serve from the beginning to the end?
I think you have to serve the whole.
For the whole case?
Yeah.
So we have, quorum is 4, and we've made it, only having 5 members. But it's really, frankly, one time I didn't make it for the exact same reason, porcupines, different dog, different porcupine. But it is those last minute, it's that and then the scheduling.
Yeah.
And we don't have a regular schedule, we only schedule when there's, a need.
Right.
So it's not like people are always holding, Wednesday evening, so.
And if we've had a hard time scheduling, we might be near the end of how long we have to schedule.
Right. There are specific windows of time.
My thinking is, we have had a full board in the past, so I think, if we make an effort to recruit, we just haven't put the word out.
Yep.
And maybe we'll be successful, and, you know, if we aren't, we only need one full-time, like, regular member. Three alternates,
Don't you
maybe a
need
lot.
two? You've Dennis's seat and Janice.
Yes, that's.
Yeah,
Yes.
so we
So
need,
two.
So that's why your quorum has to be 4. If you went down to
Right.
5, a quorum would be 3, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, three would be on the too few side for some of the complexity and thinking through things and the sharing of writing. So thank you, Anne, we need two.
It's a seven.
And-
Seven.
it's a 7-member board, yeah. Yeah, so you need 2 full, we have 2 full vacancies and then,
And one alternate.
and 1 alternate.
Yeah.
Barbara?
I want to see if this might help with scheduling. So granted, you don't have to meet like, you know, the third Thursday of every month or something like that. You only meet when you need to. But what if everybody on the DRB came up with one day a month, one evening a month, that you all say, if we need to have a DRB meeting, it's gonna be on this date each month. And that way, when something comes, and then because you don't have to publish it, but you've all put it on your calendars. And then if nothing comes up, you don't need it, you don't meet. But everybody at least has saved the date.
No, it's a good idea, so gonna bring that to the group.
Yeah, Tia.
We could also then block it off on a town hall calendar so that the
Yes.
space is reserved.
Right, exactly.
Because it's a lot, board has every Monday reserved. They don't use it every Monday, but they have it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but because it is easy to cancel a meeting.
Yeah.
People like when you do that.
People love meetings getting canceled.
You know, one resource.
That's an option?
No.
That came to mind when you were talking earlier, Jordan, is, I think the town has a SharePoint site now.
Yes.
Yep. I was wondering if we
That would
would
be
have our
amazing.
own folder, just for the DRB, and then we wouldn't be always emailing documents back and forth.
That has been, that's been brought up, by a couple of committees, and I think both for,
think
planning,
planning
DRB, and emergency management, have requested, because it's so document heavy, those things need to also be relatively accessible, to other groups within the town. We can, I haven't gotten a clear answer on, actually, I've got a soft answer. So the easiest way to do something like that would to be, to assign a dedicated email address that is within the network. And I think we did that for the DRB, maybe? Or it was on the list, so it was on our initial list when we started kind of sussing out this, the system. That we made for like planning commission and DRB to have an official email address, and then once we have an email address, you're in the network and you can have a SharePoint. Outside access to those shared resources, you know, by outside email addresses is a feature I think we can turn on. But it opens up a bit of a security risk, and a management process for making sure that people who are appointed, have the right access. So we just have to kind of create like a protocol around that. But I do think that would be a direction that we should move, and then, we'll want to make sure that that'll come with a certain cost. It's not terribly expensive, especially if it's at a basic level. So I think maybe what we should do is, get a refresher on like what the true capacity is for a individual account, both at like the basic level and the like full rights, like Microsoft 365 rights level, because right now we have a couple of different tiers of access, that provide access to like a full version of Word and the whole suite of Microsoft, right? So, and present that to a handful of committees and have a conversation about which one would be most appropriate, so that we can work it into the budget for next year, to make sure that that's something that we can do, or at least have funds appropriated for. But that seems like a no-brainer to me for sure. And I'd love to get that rolling. If there's any way to get that rolling sooner, I guess, by spending out of a budget.
From my
We may have some
experience,
room in like the technology budget to do that.
So, I work for state government, we have a SharePoint site and we provide access to non-state individuals.
And partners.
Well,
Yeah.
without using a partner
Oh,
email
really?
address.
Oh, interesting.
So, I mean, I can always share what I know, whether.
We definitely,
Safety system is what SharePoint
with the
package that town has and.
most recent feedback I got was, which was a couple of weeks ago, is like, yes, you can do it. You just have to, we just have that, globally administered setting turned off, for initial security reasons. Because we didn't kind of clearly define our ecosystem, and that was just a most risk averse position, but,
Because we would
We
only
should-
want access to one folder.
to one
And
folder,
only certain people have access to that.
right?
So,
And that would mean standing up probably individual SharePoints, I think, or we could put it under a town one, which we've already created, but we haven't started to use. So the select board has their own, but the town has another one that I don't think we use quite yet, because we have a server that most of the staff uses for that kind of shared stuff. So we'll pursue that, for sure. And then I think the other thing that we need to make sure that we have a budget for is training. And what makes the most sense for bringing new members up to speed. I think you raise a pretty valid point. New members, even if they have an interest in this stuff and are well suited for it, we'll need some time to get up to speed on the town specific regulations. And how do we do that? And how do we set aside time for folks to do that? And maybe it's a process of meeting with like the planning commission who structures the town regulations. And,
we
yeah,
had a bit of discussion on the board about how would we orient new members?
Yeah.
We've been talking about both training for everybody and
And
then
then
what.
future orientation.
Future orientation. So we could, we've drafted ideas, I don't have anything formal to present, but I think we actually do have a regular scheduled meeting once a month for the winter, because we want to work on these details that are just going to be administrative. So training and hopefully orientation of new members, and continuing to look at our rules of procedure, just to make sure we're all clear. And so a few other sort of proposal ideas for the planning commission.
We want to work on the application.
Yeah.
so since you brought up the application, and then before we kind of close out this conversation, are there any kind of last parting words, I guess, to leave for feedback? So either skill sets or attributes to put into a call for applicants for these open positions. We have.
Tell you that little list that I read, but I think it's really a willingness to learn.
That's still, yeah, okay.
Yeah. We didn't feel that people needed specific content knowledge per se, or, really just willing to figure out what these regulations mean and spend some time committed to understanding them. And I think we did feel that it would be helpful if people have some understanding of how regulations work, in whatever way that comes. At which, could be from previous volunteer experience, work experience.
Thank you.
We're eager to have some new folks get to work on our training.
Well, thank you. Thanks for taking the time to join us tonight, and the double participation, Rachel and Scott. Thank you for the contributions. And with that, I think we'll move on and look forward to picking up the conversation a little more. So we'll try to coordinate on getting a call for applicants. Hopefully in the next week or so, we're going to be talking about another committee to appoint for. So there's some synergy there and some momentum, hopefully, to have some folks apply for a couple of different positions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a good night.
Willa, can you email me that little list too? I got 3 out of the 4.
Sure.
Thank you.
So now we have a land sale proposal, on the agenda.
Glad to go to the front seat.
Yeah, you want to come in a front seat or?
I'm gonna turn over the minutes taking to Tegan.
Did you, hey, Greg, do you have that map was really hard to read on the computer, you know?
We brought a smaller copy.
I was so hoping you had a nice big one.
So what we have before us to consider is a proposal to purchase the Pelchuk's property on the county road. And it is a thoughtful proposal. So we just wanted to have an initial dialogue about that and the opportunities that it could afford. I guess the concerns that may exist about it. I think it's certainly my understanding that a purchase like this is gonna have to, there's no decision to be made at this point, but that would have to go before the town at town meeting in one form or another, I would imagine. If it's gonna either be bonded or decided on to be financed. So with that, so we have a copy of that proposal that was circulated. Everybody have a chance to kind of read through that and comfortable with the numbers that are being discussed. I'll turn it over to the Pelchucks for a casual intro.
So people that get affected, whatever happens the most,
Are
is
here tonight.
Austin on the screen, and
Oh,
Jennifer
And Jennifer Whitman.
behind. Those are the 2 that get affected the most, because the right of way goes through their areas.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to acknowledge them and, be careful and cautious about, their feelings and, whatnot. So the proposal that we put before you is, we have been for the last couple of years actively trying to sell our 45-acre parcel of land that's off the county road. We have a deeded right of way. The parcel is, a 45-acre parcel, 35 acres are in the current use plan. We have a forest management plan. The other 10 acres contain, rock mineral deposits. We have been operating Wallstone Quarry, but not overly. For the last 2 years, we really haven't been doing anything. In 2023, when Calais experienced the big flood, the governor put in the emergency orders. We worked hand in hand with the town, to come up with a proposal to, have the town contract and hire a crusher entity to come in and crush. And at the last minute, it fell through as far as the crushing entity. But it certainly has the resources there. Part of it is grassy pasture area, can be used for, material storage. Greg always had the idea that maybe put up a solar farm. There is, electricity with a, transmission line on a nearby pole. We helped with the installation costs with Jennifer to put the pole there. We have a valid Act 250 permit that we got in 2023, permits for 10 years. We renew it every 10 years, so we just got it renewed again last year. And we are, asking $450,000 as an asking price. And Greg and I are willing to hold the paper and finance it for the town for, an annual payment for 20 years at 4% interest. And, you know, Part of this is, we love the town of Calais. We know, whoever knows, you know, maybe some big developer could come in and offer us way more than that. When we initially tried or started selling it, you know, we said, we're gonna ask, you know, $1.2 million, and we've come down, and we had an auction and it was unsuccessful. And, you know, Greg is looking to retire. We have this asset there. We don't do anything with it. It's
We
all
haven't done
bought and
nothing
paid
for
for.
3 years.
We haven't done a
Pulled one rock out
stitch
of it
in 2 years. It's just sitting there. And we feel that it really has some value to the town. Now, in what capacity, I'm not sure, but we always know that for many years, the town, wished and hoped that they had storage capacity or some other work capacity on this side of town. And I think that that really fits the bill for that.
We were approached 2 or 3 times to sublease it, to build a barn for horses. I won't go into that case.
Yeah, please.
To go, another thing, to lease another section of it out, and I didn't wanna get it all tied up to the town to store other materials over there. And I said no to both of them at the time.
So anyway, we thought we would, you know, talk to you about it, see if you think it's anything the town would be interested in purchasing. And if not, we'll try to sell it again.
We did get an offer that Rose says it's a scam, but I went on the internet to the site, and it is out of South Carolina, so I have no idea what they're gonna think.
Scam. But anyway. No, I mean, you know, there's different levels to actively selling your property, and we're kind of, I think, on the sleepy side of it. You know, it's just sitting there, but, you know, we think it really, you know, and especially we've noticed the change in the weather patterns. We know that with these 2 floods in 2023, 2024, gravel resources in this area are becoming more scarce.
Could you talk about that a little more? You said you have an Act 250 permit. Exactly what's it for and what does it
It's for
allow?
wall stone.
What does
We
that
can
mean?
blast, we
Okay.
can hammer, and we can load it out. We're for making fieldstone walls. It does not have a crushing permit. The town will have to go and amend our permits to crushing. If I was gonna be nice, and I would be nice, the neighbors around, I would stipulate that if you were gonna crush, you crush in 2 months. The month of May, when everybody's windows are still closed and stuff hasn't started, or the month of November, before the end of our permit. Because our existing permit goes from May 1st to December 1st. And with the technology they got now, they can crush enough material in 3 weeks, 4 weeks to be outside, to take the town for the whole year or more.
And that would be important if we actually wanted to make gravel,
If you wanted
because
to
we
make
have
it.
to make it smaller than wall stone.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's just like the gentleman that we talked about
Yeah.
last summer, and I got down and I wish you would do it, because if you went through it, you would sit here talking with him. Because you guys are probably homeless or.
Say it again, I didn't, it would take 3 weeks
Yeah.
to,
It crushed about 8,000 yards, that's what our permit allows.
and that's what the town would use in a year?
We use probably about 5,000 to 6,000 yards a year now with the cost of the material as high as it is. The average road-based material now is going anywhere from $18.50 up to $22.50 a ton or a yard.
So it's possible then that we could actually sell crushed stone?
No, you
In
don't want
addition-
to sell.
No.
You need
Want
to keep
For
it.
yourself,
Yeah,
okay? No, I'm dead serious about this.
yeah.
You keep it for yourselves. Because if you guys decide to do it, this is your thing that will go on for this town, and they can keep extending the permits if they do it properly. We've done it already, 3 extensions on it. We can keep going, this can keep going for 100 years.
No, don't say that until you got to Act 250.
But the biggest thing is you got 2 sides of rock there. The back section's all granite, and the front section's all black schist like Pike uses for their asphalt. And between the 2 of them, back when I had to brainstorm to do this 25 years ago, 30 years ago, I forget now, 99, that one of the guys at the original deposition was Jim McDonald. And he earned the McDonald quarries over there where Bigford's are. And his idea is he couldn't crush it in the fall, back when we were doing depositions. So he wanted to go and mix granite and black schist together and see what would happen if he ran it through his crushers. But we never were able to do that.
Think of what we pay for gravel now. We go to Woka.
It's a trucking charge.
We're in the gravel trucking business now, and
And the time it takes,
So
per hour.
would we have the capability to make every kind of gravel that we need? I'm no expert, but I know that Bill, you could probably help me out with this. In fact, you would know, Greg. We need several different grades
Well,
of gravel, don't we?
Yeah, you need dense graded, which is 2.5 inch minus. You need 3/4 to 1 inch, which is your regular stone on our roads. And you would need ditch stones, and then the next thing you need some big rocks for the waters that we're gonna be getting.
And we can get all that out of this.
You can make it.
Well, the first step would be though, if you decided to purchase this land or whatever, you have to amend the Act 250 permit.
I understand.
Yeah,
To
because it
crush.
doesn't allow for crushing, but I can tell you, I think that a municipality versus a private entity trying to amend the permit to have crushing, I think a municipality, perhaps would be easier than doing it for a private individual.
And the biggest thing is to keep it small scale. That's what we did from the very beginning. I don't think that we ever got up to over 2,000 yards as our best year in 30, well, we've been there since 2004. Probably about 1,500 to 1,600 yards was our best year, between wall stone and scrap rock to sell to local yards around.
So, it's a big conversation. I maybe don't want to get too far into the weeds on the crushing,
Right.
too much. I think that, with a little bit of imagination, you can kind of pull at the strings of what the benefits, would be, for this, whether we're crushing it, using it as storage, and very the handful opportunity or occasions, I've been a party to conversations about a need for some sort of stump dump or for the town, which we don't really have, especially if we're pulling down, trees, ash trees. I think that, right. And making that material available to community members who can use it for firewood, et cetera, et cetera. So, I think.
Question I have, what is in the forest?
Okay.
What was that, man?
Well, ma'am?
Or Ian.
It's mostly softwood, is that right?
No, in the 35 acres,
Yeah.
it's mixed
It's
woods.
mixed all
Yeah,
together.
hardwood.
It's mixed. What have you been managing it for timber?
Yes. Timber and pole.
It's in current use, I believe, correct?
It's in
Yeah,
current
yeah.
use
And
and
we have a forest
Red
management.
Star out of,
Oh, Kari's brother is
Yeah, Marcus
is your
Bradley.
forester.
Marcus Bradley, okay?
Bradley, look at that, he's a good guy.
He actually started with, it was Paul, Kate and Marcus that started for us in 99.
Oh, gosh.
Believe it or not, and they're still doing it.
Small town.
So when was the last logging time you logged?
Jennifer, what, 2 years ago? 2 years ago?
Recently then, there would be potential to continue
Well, about every
harvesting.
10 years, because
Every 10
they can be selected. They did one little clear cut, I guess it was behind Gene, Don Bowles' old place. And Bob Bowles, because of, it was a.
Red pine plantation was not well,
It was
so
thick.
he amended the forest management plan in order
About
to
an acre,
get rid of
acre and a
that.
half, 2 acres of trees
Thank
went
you.
by. The front section, when we talk about, solar, it was with Jennifer and Rose were putting the pole in. We got to talk to an electric engineer, and I probably should have done the solar about 20 years ago, because it'd be generating money every day of the week. But it didn't. But
There's a nice flat pasture,
in the front area.
couple of acres.
And it will, general look at solar panels, Austin may look at them, but I think it's done under the dip enough that they may not.
There's no emails there.
I noticed a finger property going out to Bliss Pond Road. Is there access through there?
No, we never did that.
But it's we own the property.
Oh, we own the
It's, I don't know how wide strip
It's, I think it's,
and 300 foot of road frontage on Bliss Pond Road. We just wanted to, instead of being completely landlocked
Mhm.
and relying only on the deeded right of way, we said we wanted to do it. And so when we subdivided, we bought the land from Stanley Morse, the late
Mhm.
Stanley Morse. That's the way we just reconfigured or configured our parcel
the
that we wanted.
creativity.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, since we have the adjoining property owners here, I just would,
Austin, down
I want to invite, Jennifer and, Austin to kind of speak to, what their thoughts are. Austin, there's, I guess is the right of way, wholly on Austin's, property, and then you're immediately adjoining, right, Jennifer, so,
The
Jennifer, why
right
don't
of
we-
way doesn't go on Jennifer's property.
No, I understand. It's right alongside. Yeah. So I'd just given an opportunity to let Jennifer register kind of your thoughts or concerns or, hopes.
Yeah, yeah, so I've been there for 13 years. These folks are like second family to me, so that complicates it a little bit. I don't mind the quarry as it was. I didn't mind when the town needed to use it for an emergency reason. I rent my house out, the RVO, the Airbnb, and I lost $5,000 because of that. But I was okay with it because it was an emergency situation and a lot of people were having, adverse reactions to that. It would totally change my quality of life if there was rock crushing and trucks in and out. I have a little tiny house in the back of the property that is adjacent to the road, where I live in the summer, and I don't think I would do that if there was trucks going by all the time. There would be no more privacy or quiet. That being said, I 100% understand the need for it in Calais, and I just wouldn't want it to get to be some bigger scale, like keeping it, like Greg said, at that scale, totally fine. Trucks during business hours, totally fine. Shortened amount of time to do the rock crushing or whatever they need to do, that seems completely reasonable to me. When I was signing in and said to Rachel, like, oh, there's this proposal in this land and there could be affordable housing. That was something I've never heard before, and like, to me, like, I want there to be affordable housing. I want to build affordable housing in my house, but that's terrifying because like, what does that look like, right? Like, is that now a road, like a major road to 30 houses, where my imagination went? And I know that, Austin has this road goes through his driveway, like right next to his garage. Like that is his home and his dooryard. So that would be significant for him. And noise, and we have animals like, dust. I have a bog that I have these American bitterns that I'm obsessed with. I would like them to still live there. So like I'm not against this idea. I don't want this to get scaled up to something bigger than it already is.
Thank you. Austin, did, you want to come off mute and share any particular thoughts?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, hi, everyone. I don't have the same long-term stint in Calais as Jennifer does. I moved here last April. But she definitely hit the nail on the head. I have a lot of the very similar concerns that she does. Like she pointed out, it does go directly by my property, by my garage, and down the entire stretch of my land. And I've had no problems with it the way it is. Greg's been a wonderful person to share that property with. But like Jennifer said, if that was to change into an active road for affordable housing, or there was going to be trucks coming in and out at all hours of the day and the night, that would definitely alter the plan I had set up for myself and my girlfriend when I moved up here last year. Like she said, she has things that severe dust and things would affect, and just, you know, the overall just image that I had of when I moved out here to Calais. So those would just be my concerns. But again, I understand, like Jennifer said, the need for, you know, use of it for the town, or even the scale that it's at. Like I said, I have no issues with the way it has been over the last year and a half I've been here.
We haven't done anything.
It's been quiet.
Yeah.
Well, last year we used it as a transloading area, cause I was one of the few trucks to bring material in and in and in.
Yeah.
And then when they got it up enough, they would move out with the 3 Calais trucks and, some other of the trucks that they had available. They would be able to move out about 600 yards, and it took me a week to get all in there.
It was, I was working from home at that time in the tiny house, and it was not horrible. Like it was not, if it was like that all the time year round, it would definitely be rough, but it was not even, I don't think, as many trucks as you thought it was, right?
Yeah.
Because I was sitting right there.
I kind of built the town for it.
Oh, sorry.
I built the town for 6
Next time I'll leave the town. Definitely dusty, and, something the town put out about the granite dust changing the, acidity of bogs. Like there's like things like that that I just never thought of, that are other things to think of. It was dusty, it's a safety thing, we have animals like that, it's a little nerve wracking, but, like I said, like a little bit of trucking during business hours, totally appropriate. The other thing that I worry about is just, my driveway is terrible. They have the, what's it called, the 52, what's your designated driveway, and it's a big paved.
Oh, yeah, the apron.
The apron, and there's a number for it. So they have a fantastic.
Oh, like B71.
B71.
Yeah.
They've got the B71, and it's amazing, but that exact stretch of county road is
Right.
where everybody is, where they're coming from Woodbury, and that is where they hit 65, and that is where they pass. So in front of my driveway is all the time 2 cars, like one car passing another, and so right up to that truck. So the increasing of truck like that just makes me nervous. Just another thing to think of.
Yeah, Charlotte.
There's a lot in this proposal.
Yeah.
And, it's really hard for me to really weigh things. So I would love to see some kind of, cost benefit, ways of mitigating costs. Are those mitigations effective? Would they work? I would love to see something that I could look at and see, how do these things weigh out?
Yeah, I think that's kind of where, certainly where I'm at. I think there's a lot of opportunities. I think as a town, we have to take very seriously an opportunity to procure land when it becomes available, when it's being offered with pretty favorable market terms. So there's a lot to weigh.
We would be your bonding agents.
I understand the proposal. Thanks. Yeah.
I think Charlotte just volunteered to head the committee.
And so I think it would be best to kind of commit to do an exploratory kind of analysis and invite in a conversation with at least 2 other committees that I can think of that might be able to take that cost benefit analysis into consideration, and see what we can kind of come up with that lays out that cost benefit analysis and some of the considerations relative to use. You know, we can take a walk before we run approach if we need to. You know, I really do hear and register the concerns of both Jennifer and Austin. And Scott, did you want to make a comment?
This would be a major big deal.
Yeah.
On the scale with the Curtis Pond Dam. There was a member of the select board Jamie, who was sort of liaison for that, it would be on the scale with this building. I was on the select board, and was sort of the champion of making this happen. It had been, neglected by the town for years and years and years, and with the help of Cy and many other people, it happened, but it was a great help to have me on the select board when we were trying to get it going. A project this big needs a champion on the select board, in my opinion.
I think you're right, and I think there's gonna need to be somebody who can answer those questions from a somewhat objective standpoint.
Not objective.
Not a wall, fighting for it. I won't go quite that far. I think there still needs to be a fair amount of objectivity involved in the consideration. Just because it seems like prudent governance, but
Oh, yeah, certainly objective for the whole board. A person, a Jamie or a Scott
so
on the board who would fight for it.
I'd like to, we're not a full board tonight. I think it'd be good to put this back on the agenda for maybe the 14th for a brief conversation about making that particular appointment and maybe making some commitments to what the next steps are for exploration. And kind of vetting the opportunity more fully. Does that make sense?
Well, if you read my sort of mini analysis, what I'd like to do is start penciling in a cost benefit analysis, and it's gonna be rough, right? We're gonna make a lot of estimates, other than the purchase price, and that's the most concrete piece of it. But we can at least start, fleshing it out and get to a point where we can ask, what else do we need to know?
Yeah.
Or, what more detail do we need, or what other considerations are there?
Yeah.
So it starts to picture. I'm happy to work on that one. But I could use some help.
Okay.
I actually can give him some information, because I did fund studies for this town for many years, of all the different quarries and what it costs sometimes, and how many hours of each employee.
Right, yeah.
I've done
So the
all this
hourly
stuff.
rate when you pay the driver.
Those were the buried in the.
To be fair, Greg, the optics of allowing you feeding the town all of the information that it needs to consider the decision. But no, I agree. We looked at, I remember taking a look at those figures when we were looking at it for the crushing, and that's gonna have to be part of it.
Wogan, that's the same.
Yeah.
Or from here to St. McCullough's in South Berry, all that mileage, he's given this to the select board so many times.
Also, you want somebody that's in the committee, and Rose said it, should say, but I'm gonna say, it, on a conservation one, because we have been protecting for the last, since Stanley handed over us, there is a perennial pool that we've been protecting for over 25 years already. It's probably one of the largest that's not on any map in Calais.
Yeah, and I think that is for a multitude of reasons, something that needs to be carefully considered, both on the operations side, but maybe also on the opportunities of involving the Conservation Commission, who,
Really, really good.
Yeah.
Stanley pointed out it to me about it in '99.
Why couldn't we ask the Conservation Commission right away? You just go take a look. Oh, you have. We've done it already.
We haven't, but we can.
Okay.
It's probably dry right now, because it's
Yeah,
so
we're
dry
just
now.
asking to go, yeah, it's a lovely time now to be out in the woods. Take a walk, get the conversation started. I'm wondering if you couldn't also have the Trails Committee take a quick look at it. They might like to do that. And would it be worth asking the Energy Committee to at least think about the solar panel proposal?
Yeah, it's only one way of getting them out there.
I don't think the Energy Committee is functioning.
It's not it hasn't been stood up as an official committee yet, but.
No, but they might, okay, you've been talking to Bill.
Yeah.
See if you could-
So somebody made a little comment on that.
Yeah, those seem to me some things we could do right away.
So do you want to commit to a follow-up, time? We want to try to revisit it for, 10,
Yeah.
10:14? Okay.
So, if I could just ask Rose and Greg, did you have a sense of how long this offer?
Oh,
good.
we're flexible.
As long as you get the vote by town meeting day, or up or down, would be
We
nice.
don't know, you can't put that kind of pressure on them.
Sure you
I'm not going, Mother
It's not a bad idea.
Mother
Well,
Nature's gonna put the pressure
let's
on.
see, we'll give you 2 weeks. No,
I think that's
we'll,
for me.
yeah, we'll just see what happens after the next meeting.
All
And,
right, thank
I mean, if you think that it might work, that's fine, and if not, it's just gonna go back on the market.
I
Well,
mean,
thank you.
I know Rose says what you sent to us is a scam, but I think more research.
Okay. I have to leave that with you guys. We're- we're gonna move on to the next meeting agenda. But thank you, Rose, and Jennifer and Austin, thank you both.
Thanks, Jen. Oh.
So moving on to the fiscal year budget conversation.
Really, Tegan's agenda item.
Yeah.
All right, sorry. So I was putting together all of my things, but I didn't realize we were deciding town office and town hall. Right, that's how.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the focus.
You want me to go over it line by line? Do you all want to ask questions? How would you like to do it?
Oh. Well,
Yes.
Yeah, I'd suggest anything that's significant.
Okay, there are a couple of little tweaks. The thing that's interesting as you start general office is that we, at Sandra's suggestion, we switched everything from 2 line items to 5 line items last year. And so we're still sort of hashing out how everything shakes out when you do that. So I guess I'll say, so Nimerick, Kari did those rough estimates. I trust him, he pays the Nimerick bills. The cost contract is $270 a month. It's been $270 a month. They don't foresee it changing, so that gives us that line item. Currently, our IT support contract is always $714.75 a month. So that doesn't look like it's changing. I have emailed Ruben to ask as we go through this server to cloud transition if that's gonna go up. He's still putting together a package of budgeting for me, so he doesn't have an answer there. Education and training has been a little all over the place because that's my fault. I've been learning coding for invoices this year, and I believe anytime I went to a conference, I put it under the Selectboard education line instead of the town clerk training line. I will be better about that this year. And I intend to do more trainings this year. There's a lot of really great opportunities in Vermont and New England. And there's a lot to learn. So I'm hoping to get out there and really dig in and learn more about my job. Maintenance for the town office is pretty straightforward. Generator maintenance. I'm still trying to figure out why those numbers are all over the place. So I will work with Kari. I think part of it was that maybe sometimes the town hall generator being put under the office generator, or maybe the previous select board just really thought it was gonna cost $3,600 in maintenance. I'm not sure why. That's why they had, or that's why we had.
It seems extraordinary.
It seems really high, so I think I put it at 1,200, and if you and I talk about it, we can get it down.
Can I just say one thing about that?
Yes.
For the maintenance contracts on those, you can have it 2 times a year or 1 time a year.
Yeah.
So that might
be
a difference in your numbers.
I feel like when we looked at the invoices, though, even when they came, it wasn't that significant.
You can look at the contract.
Brookfield Service,
Brookfield
they
Service.
come and they do like an oil change and a run through.
Yeah. I remember signing the contract. I
Yeah.
don't remember whether it was 2 or 1, but we have the contract.
I think
in
we
file.
did 2.
2
I
times
think
a
I think
year.
we did too, although I couldn't.
I
promise.
would swear to it, but
But still, it should be pretty, I think
So-
they do a big one and then a small one.
So there's,
maybe-
I'd say it's about $400 for each visitor, something like that.
Well, so yeah, I guess we'll just get a sharper number on that. I get, the only other thing I think I'd register in there, even if it is reduced for whatever reason, it just seems inflated unnecessarily. We do have a lingering need to consider moving the generator.
this is the town office generator.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And the school one isn't
And the
related to
school
this
one
at
is
all.
not related to us at all.
Interesting, okay.
So I have 2 invoices that have come in this fiscal year. One was for January to June for the generator, and it was $385. One was for our annual service and inspection, and that was almost $500. So I think I was thinking Barbara's 400-ish 3 times. And I'd have to look to see if there's another invoice that comes in July through December to see if that's, if we're looking at like 900 or if we're looking at like 1,200.
Okay.
But those are, either way, it's gonna be more in that range than the 3,600. Facilities maintenance is the Gospel Hollow warden. He gets 200 a month. Telephone and internet, I put where we got those numbers from. Advertising is a ballpark. It comes up more frequently than I thought it would, whether it's between advertising for jobs or posting warnings for things we have to warn, like it's a thing that comes up. It's better to have enough in there. Postage kept going up last year, so we kept buying postage. I think we have enough that we won't have to buy as much postage, really hoping.
And I had
Yes.
something, except that things come up, so for example, I don't think the listers, but had budgeted for this fiscal year, the postage to do all those reappraisal postcards.
Yeah,
So things do come up.
things do come up.
Yeah.
And I'm working with cards to figure out, like, when something like that comes up, is that a lister expense or is that a postage expense? When the listers need to send those postcards, and we talked about the paper today that we purchased for them, does that count as a lister expense? Or so working out those details will help us get better numbers. Office supplies, kept it pretty standard. Same for office equipment. I know the listers, Kari took 2 of the chairs the listers ordered to use for his chairs, and the listers would very much like to have chairs back. So we need to order a few more chairs that will bump things up.
Kari's there a few more hours.
He is a few more hours. He's also a little younger than that, so, you know, it's a balance. So there's security, and then we get down to the software licenses and then technology reserve, and that's another thing where I really need to talk to Architect about what we are looking at, especially as Jordan just offered to buy some more licenses, so that software license.
I said we would look into it, but
You
yeah.
said it was a no-brainer.
I'm just advocating. I did not make the decision.
So I'm assuming that we might have kind of a flip-flop in those 2 columns where software licensing is gonna go up significantly, maybe not to 9,000, but significantly. And the technology reserve is gonna go down if we're only putting out money for computers, printers, you know, smaller tech items. Town office reserve fund seems fine. It's a great building. If we really wanted to look at making the bathroom ADA accessible, we would need to be putting more money into that, but other than that, it's a great building. We bought our AC unit, so that will just fall off the edge of the budgeting spreadsheet after the years go by. Thank you for the AC unit. So that's town office. Any questions there?
No. Thank you.
And then town hall, Kara and I did a little bit of this together. Maintenance is,
Actually, can I add at the town office, how's it working out with all you guys in there together?
I think it's fine,
It's the same number of people really, because
I mean,
essentially replaced Sandra.
except Sandra hasn't been there in 2 years.
Okay.
Well, no, 4 years. She left in January when COVID hit, of 2020.
Oh, yeah.
So she wasn't there.
We've
for
been
4 years.
concerned about outgrowing the town office, so I hope you're telling us that's not imminent.
So
We're
I
okay.
think space fine, it's okay, noise level is always an issue.
You know, it's a little challenging. We are looking into, unrelated to, well, maybe eventually related to this, getting, a part for Barbara's phone that will either make things louder or put things directly into her hearing aid so she can hear better on the phone. She's been struggling with that. And we all like, if I see one person is on the phone and particularly two people on the phone, I never start a phone call. There is no way 3 people can talk on the phone in that office at the same time. It's, that part is challenging.
I think adding another person in there even for 20 hours a week would be a challenge.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
I
yeah.
think if there were 4 people, you know, working in there, not really listers, it would be noisy, it would be more, just more cramped.
Distracting.
I wonder if it's worth taking a look at, putting, like some partitions, in that are more like, cubicle partitions to absorb, some of the sound, would help, a lot. And it would, there's not a ton of,
We could pull that information out if we wanted to.
and if that's something worth exploring. Kari, you're still in the corner of the office space there, which is somewhat awkward and probably very distracting as folks are coming into the office.
But they're delighted if they want to see him.
So this doesn't have any of that, any of those adjustments in there. Is that needed? Is that worth considering?
Yes, I was, in 3 weeks, we're gonna have the discussion about my performance evaluation. I think that leads to a conversation about staffing models.
Yeah.
Which space is directly connected to. So I see that all as, you know, part of a larger conversation. There's no doubt we're gonna have to do something if we continue to grow. I mean, even adding a halftime person, I think we're gonna need some solutions.
Okay. Janitorial.
Yeah, town hall, janitorial is, Kari reminded me we swapped budgeting line items, but it should be 2,400. That is what we pay Donna to clean this building on the regular. Supplies are straightforward, utilities.
Can I ask, on that line, it says generator increased power bill significantly.
Yes.
What happened with that? Why?
We put in a generator and the power bill went up a bunch.
It's a head bolt heater in the winter. And I can't explain it, but it actually sort of doubled the electrical usage in this building.
Yeah.
We turned it off in the warmer months, but it's going back on again within the next month.
And is that simply because it does a test every week and it
No,
runs?
it's warming the battery all winter long.
It's keeping.
So that if and when the generator needs to turn on, it's warm enough.
Do they have a solar accessory that you can add to it?
I don't know, I haven't looked into this at all, but it took us a while to figure out what was going on because the bills just shot up last October.
Almost $2,000. Wow.
Yeah.
So
it's really disappointing.
Circling back to the generator, comment that I made before.
Yeah.
I casually tasked Bill with bringing the moving of the generator to a new location, coming up with a solution. And it's a lingering to do that has come up. And I think we should probably budget for it. The town is gonna have to pay to move it or come up with a solution. We just have to know what that solution is.
There's one.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing that needs to be considered. And I wonder if in that kind of proposal, we also task Brookfield with figuring out ways that we can bring that cost down. You know, I don't know that we need to move the generator next year 6 months, whenever, that's not an urgent thing, and it's an unfortunate eyesore, but so is the propane tank and a couple of other things, but I wonder if we can task Brookfield with giving us a little bit more information about, how we might be able to reduce those costs. And in that, if there is a solar option, can we bundle that into moving the generator, the relocation of the generator? If we move it to another portion of the building that has better view or a better exposures for, not better view, it will have a better view. But it may have better exposure, and maybe we can offset some of that with like a solar something.
It's also a lot bigger than we need by more than 3 times.
Yeah,
It really is, but what it puts out. Now, I'm not sure if that was just the way we got it or what we got, where the money came from to purchase it.
well, it was ARPA originally.
Isn't that considering the fact that this might be used as emergency
Emergency
shelter, it would have a
shelter.
lot of stuff plugged into it if we were using it?
Still.
Have you identified any options for relocating it? Cause I thought floodplain was a concern and.
Talking about it. It's a question of floodplain, it's a question of view shed as well.
Yeah. So I think it's really kind of a something that the design review board just needs to, that they're well positioned to weigh all of those, most critically the. Yeah, I think Nick stands ready to assist and help facilitate it as he can. He's gonna have the most line of sight on why they opted for that particular size, but I don't have those details. And if in considering a move, we can reduce its size for whatever reason. That seems like that would be advantageous as well. All right.
One other factor that's just frustrating to me is consolidated prices have gone up and up and up. So we are paying for consolidated to our phone lines at this building at the town office. Partially because they have the kind of lines that our security system works with and consolidated does not. So we're paying for the most expensive internet and the most expensive phone. And
there, with the fiber, is there any way to move the security system over
not
to?
the security system, the different security system.
Really? Who's your security with? Is it Mountain View?
Yes.
Security is fire alarm.
Yes.
But isn't the phone a phone? I'm just.
There are hard lines and there are soft lines and there are, yeah, there are different ways to do it.
Okay.
It seems like it'd be worth looking at what a security system change would be, the cost of that relative to the cost of letting go of the phone lines. That's in the current fiscal environment, it seems like we're finding more ways to spend money, so I'll try to temper my recommendations, but yeah. And the town hall reserve fund is a reduced $6,000 contribution this year.
It's the same as we budgeted last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, we reduced several of the reserve funds last year, so we'll have to look at that this year.
Yep. Okay. Are there any questions or
Actually, maybe you could just put a note in that, Kari, because when we reduced them, we kind of said, well, we'll try to go back up to the regular contribution next year, just so that we won't lose. That is something to think about when we revisit.
One of the things that put in with that, it's anything that is a reserve fund, it'd be helpful to know what the fund balance is for each of those. That's really our only, there's not a lot of discretionary room, and that would be helpful.
Right.
For sure.
Consider each of them, and then we'll get to that point.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other feedback or input for these particular budget segments? Well, thank you, Tegan, and Kari. We're on our way.
Sure.
Do you need any other information from us, at this point on either of these or feedback?
I don't think so. I made some notes and I'll nail some things down and we'll get all the, software tech questions answered. Part of that was waiting on us to get on the Nimrod cloud, and that is scheduled for Thursday morning, so blah, 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 here we go. Once that happens, RV Tech can start moving their things onto the cloud.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm still thinking about the reserve funds. I wonder if it wouldn't make sense in this draft to put them in at the level that we'd hope to fund them.
That's what I,
Actually,
that's what I heard you saying.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, yeah.
Reset to.
reset
higher
it at
levels.
10,000 and yeah, and
And
then,
then we'll go from there.
yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
and a note about where they are, what are the fund balances.
Yeah, thank you.
It's fine. And so then in terms of next steps with the budget, Barbara, do you wanna run down, can you, what the schedule is in October for committees and?
Oh, I've got my own scribbled notes. So, we have most of them scheduled. The next meeting, October 14th, we are confirmed to do town clerk again, the delinquent tax collector, the development review board, and the cemetery commission. The two who have not responded to my 3 emails now are the listers and the zoning administrator. So I suspect they'll both be ready by.
Yeah, we'll have
14th.
numbers from them.
They were
They gave me rough draft
Yeah,
this morning.
but they just haven't responded to my email.
Take their chairs away and tell them.
Maybe,
Two weeks
maybe
later,
that's why they're doing
Yeah.
that.
Bring in some milk crates.
Yeah, right.
Second meeting in October, October 28th, everybody's confirmed, color covered, conservation, emergency management, the animal control officer,
Great.
and the swim committee. Planning can be here if you need them, but Jared said we're level funded, we don't have any changes. And so that would be up to whether, I suggested to him, it'd be great if you could still be here, because sometimes the select board has questions about your book budget, or they have ideas or suggestions for your budget. So it would be great if you could be here in case the select board wants to talk with you about it. And I then at that point, when he was kind of going, if I really gotta be there, so I turned him over to Kari.
I said you're gonna be here anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah. It's
Just
the
take a
second-
few minutes to talk about, how's it going?
Yeah, I think that, yeah, I'm leaning towards making sure that it's, I like earmarked, and particularly with the kind of continued dialogue with the DRB, it'd be nice to see if maybe we want to at least use that opportunity to just kind of cover how are things going?
Yeah.
You know, what do you want to be doing for next year?
Yeah.
And then the last group was the first meeting in November, November 11th. And on the slate, I had energy, historic preservation, and trails. Trails, is confirmed, but they said they were not gonna ask for any money, so I don't know if they need to be here or not. Historic preservation said that they work completely off of grants and they're not impacted by the town budget. They're not gonna make a request because they get everything funded back by grants. So they don't probably need to be here. And energy, I got a weird response back, which said, we no longer have an energy committee.
Well, yeah, because we've never really formally formed one.
Not right, but there has been an energy committee, it just hasn't been select board appointed. So I didn't know what his response meant, that we have no energy committee.
I think they're ceasing to work on anything but supporting window dressers.
Yeah.
That's my understanding. They're not meeting anymore. They're not taking on new projects.
Yeah, what I don't know is if that's the way the rest of the people in the energy committee feel or not. So I will talk about that offline. So at the moment, we have basically nobody scheduled for early November because historic preservation said they don't need to come, trails said they don't need to come, and energy said they don't need to come.
Well, let's leave them on there anyway, and I guess we can decide if we want to try to bring them
Yeah, I
in
think we will.
for more of a charge
We will take
conversation.
the time to
Yeah.
discuss budget, whether we have guests or not.
Yeah,
the other thing is highway department.
Right.
I think I'd sort of like to go with an early draft at the next meeting.
Okay,
Just start talking about it, because it's obviously gonna be a huge portion of the budget.
and it's too early, that meeting would be too early to start looking at some of the external, emergency services. Right? It would be by a month.
Although I got an email from Albert, and fire chief, saying he would like to come on the 14th and make a proposal to purchase a new ambulance.
Okay,
That's outside of their normal, annual request.
okay,
But not bring the operating budget, that, well, of course, you can't do that till they've had the meeting and it's all been
Right, this is
finalized.
He didn't give a lot of detail. But yes, so we're not scheduled to hear from the fire departments until December.
December. Okay. Well, I'd say let's leave it at that for now, and we'll keep that time earmarked, I think. And if we start moving through some of the other conversations and either want to use it for ourselves or maybe want to try to see if we can't pull emergency services forward, then maybe we'll do that. But either way, we'll allocate that time in the November meetings for our own review. Okay, great. Thank you. And then the last agenda item nope.
Several more.
Oh, no, wow. That's last. The last agenda item on this page of the agenda is the Ordinance Advisory Committee. And we started this conversation at our last meeting. We have gone through some more revisions on some structural changes to the specific charge that we're going to propose for the forming of this, as well as some language around recruitment for the committee. So has everyone had the chance to review the charge before we kind of dive into that conversation? So again, for more context, for the public, the premise here is that we, as a select board, are interested in standing up a ordinance advisory committee that will take a directed approach to looking at and reviewing ordinances that are on the books and taking into consideration updates or revisions to those in kind of a systematic way, since the select board agendas tend to be fairly full. And whether we try to do them ourselves or delegate them to subcommittees, is problematic on a number of levels. And so we were thinking that having an ordinance committee that would be an advisory committee that has standing representation of select board members or member, depending on the size that we kind of end up with, as well as a standing representative from the town office. At this point, we're leaning towards the town clerk relative to the town clerk's role in records keeping and ordinance review and enforcement. So that's where we kind of left it. And then the remaining decisions are how many more community members, what's the final size that we think that this ordinance committee is going to be, and having a conversation about the first set of ordinances that they'd be reviewing, and making a decision to solicit for it. So does anybody have any questions? Probably not within this group because we've talked about it, but are there any questions from the public about the ordinance committee? So just for the record, as it's been currently charged, the first slate of ordinances for review are kind of a soft start. But things that we know are needed and outstanding for review, which are the Curtis Pond Island Ordinance, the Curtis Pond Recreational Area Ordinance, the Dog Ordinance, as well as the use of the town right-of-way, which is a work in the right-of-way ordinance. So that is kind of the initial slate of ordinances to look at. With a huge caveat being that once we work through that initial slate of recommended changes from the advisory committee, the review of the road-related ordinances would be next up, because there are a handful of policies and ordinances that interplay there, and frankly, I think they need some good dialogue, and I think this committee will be able to work through that. So we're getting them started on some of the easier ones, I guess. And then the next ones up would be the road related ordinances, including our road standards, which we modified slightly just to be in compliance with the state relative to stormwater runoff, but it has some other things that need to be taken into consideration.
And the highway ordinance with the speed limits.
The highway ordinance with the speed limits would be right at the top for that one as well, to take into consideration the traffic studies, and then I believe we're gonna have to probably lump the curb cut in there as well, which are all due for consideration, and frankly, I think a lot of those have to be kind of taken a look at the same time. And maintenance. So right now we have two separate, we have a road maintenance application. I don't know that we really have a ordinance, the private maintenance, so I guess that would probably be rolled up into a more comprehensive use of town highway right of way, with just a more specific application.
There's a lot of work to do.
Yeah, so that would probably be up in the front then for that particular one. So, are there any changes to the charge that has been kind of consolidated by Tegan in preparation for making a call for applicants?
You're talking about the recruiting posting now.
No, the charge.
The charge, I'm sorry.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah. Just trying to do it all at once. No, the charge specifically.
I've never written a charge, so no hard.
I'm sorry, yeah. I guess the big question is, how large do we think this group needs to be? And
I'd like to see who applies.
okay,
Figure it out.
okay.
We only get one applicant, we'll have to fill in if we get,
Can we form the committee without having the specific size? So can we vote to form the committee, or can we just, was your thought that we put out a solicitation for applications and then form the committee?
yeah, I mean, because, yeah,
Okay.
it was.
So the draft recruitment that I drafted was written as if the committee had not yet been formed, saying the select board would like to form this committee. And then we put a suggested number of people.
Okay,
3 to 5.
3 to 5.
Yeah.
Citizens, in addition to the 2 select board, a town office, yeah.
All right.
Give us a number of people.
So that seems appropriate. You put out the notice, you say we're planning to form a committee and let us know if you want to join, right?
Right, so there's 2 different things. There's the charge that Ann drafted, which I guess Tegan then worked on, and then there's the going out public recruitment.
So we're recruiting 3 to 5 people from the public, wouldn't that give us an even number of people?
Personally, I don't care.
What do you
It's
mean?
just for voting
I'm
purposes,
just
most
not, I
groups are odd
know,
numbers.
these groups always work by consensus anyway, but,
Okay.
if it's a
fine with me, I
concern,
just wanted to point it out because it's.
if it's a concern, we can just balance it with staff and or select board members to make it an odd number, once we see what
We're
we've
not
got.
stating how many will be appointed.
Right.
We're looking to see how many we want to bring in, and then once they decide who gets appointed, if they want to appoint an odd number, that's what they'll do.
And also, I don't know that they'll be, it's not gonna be conducting business, they're going to be making recommendations to the board, so they are not going to serve in the same voting roles as the DRB or the planning commission, so their need for a quorum to conduct business is likely not applicable. But that.
Yeah, they can always say, 3 of us thought this way and 2 of us thought that
Yeah.
way. There's an issue. and-
Yeah, we have other committees that have even numbers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Move on.
Okay. So if we're comfortable with those concepts, then I think we just need to make a decision then to post, for this,
Are you moving now to the
announcement, yeah,
I would like to make a suggestion.
okay.
And which is to remove the last 3 paragraphs before how to apply. And just say, if you would like to see the charge to the committee, go on the website. Just because we need to make it shorter.
Mhm.
And that's just copied from the charge basically anyway.
That sounds good, I think, can we then change it?
The select board has identified 4 ordinances and will turn its attention to road issues.
Yes.
I think maybe keep the paragraph about following the provisions of state open meeting law.
In the recruitment, necessary to say that?
Well, no. I think it should say these are gonna be public meetings somewhere. It's
Okay.
not like a secret committee. If they're gonna hold public meetings, I think that should be said.
I mean, the charter has been adopted.
No, so I think that I would probably list it on the website as a draft charge or charter.
Okay.
And link that, and then put it on the website and then link from the Front Porch Forum posts, and other posts just to that. Does that sound
Okay.
pretty reasonable?
Okay.
That would make it shorter.
I forget this is not a timeline for
Right.
responding. Do we want to give people 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
Well,
We
so,
had October 10th in the how to apply.
so the October 10th would give us time to put everything in the folder, and I guess that's 3 weeks between now and our next meeting. So I guess at that point, we could probably make a decision to form the committee, but probably not make decisions on specific appointments unless we wanted to take up appointing the standing members who we already know are going to be 1 or 2 select board members and the town clerk, but then give us the opportunity to review applications or discuss applicants.
Would applicants come and talk to the select board?
I think that would be the most appropriate for sure, yeah,
We'll do that on the
So
14th.
that could be on the 14th.
on the
On
14th.
the 14th.
All right, sounds like a plan.
So do we want to add some verbiage in there to say have your application in and then, or your letter of interest in with the qualifications and then plan to attend on the
Okay,
14th?
On the 14th.
Great.
So are you guys gonna vote on this, or it's just a discussion and?
I don't think there's anything to necessarily vote on. I think
So I
we,
just want to make sure I understand. So for the Front Porch Forum recruitment and full board recruitment, I'm deleting 2 paragraphs, not 3. We're
No,
leaving.
you're deleting 3, but adding somewhere in there, something about these meetings will be conducted in public. I don't know, did you have an idea where, Chris?
I thought Christie wanted the paragraph about the public meetings.
I did, and then
Oh, the
I
whole
changed
thing?
my mind, and I said, we just need to be clear that there'll be public meetings.
Yeah.
I don't think that the recruitment notice has to go through all of the, all of the detail in that paragraph.
Okay.
That will be in the charge, right?
Correct.
Yes.
That's all wording that is in the charge, yeah.
And there'd be,
Okay, so the public meeting is gonna be in charge, that's going on the website, it doesn't need to be mentioned in the recruitment.
can there be a link in the recruitment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Website? So
That's
they can
what
click
Yeah,
on
I'll
it.
put a link in the recruitment
Yeah.
notice to
The
the
charge.
charge. But you're saying completely delete those 3 paragraphs, and I don't need to make a reference to public meetings.
Well, I think Chris wanted a sentence in there somewhere that said, made a reference to all meetings will be conducted in public.
Okay. I got it.
What is the difference between the charge and the resolution that I drafted? Like, what is the charge supposed to be?
I don't know. That resolution caught me by surprise. Why do we have to have a resolution?
Most of the time, when select boards formally create a committee, they have a resolution. It's in their minutes and it's
We didn't do that when we formed the emergency management committee.
It wouldn't be a bad practice to start, and especially for this particular one that's gonna be relative to ordinances. So I think,
it's good to have a founding document.
The town clerk has been doing training. I know.
she seems to be making a recommendation for best practices, and I think if I'm interpreting the message properly.
It's good to have a document to go back to when you're wondering about the history of the committee or commitment. To have this very simple, very straightforward, this is what we did and why we did it under these circumstances.
Well, and so I think both are still probably appropriate, so we should be prepared to adopt the resolution. And then the charge is what's going to set the work for the initial priorities. And the intention of this committee is that their priorities are going to be very, very deliberately set by the select board. So I think both in this particular instance are appropriate.
For the next meeting, not tonight.
No, for the next meeting, we
Okay.
prepare,
'Cause I think you-
adopt a resolution.
That notion.
Yeah, and then also adopted the initial charge of priorities. Maybe the charge gets shorter a little bit. Okay. Ready, comfortable moving on?
Can I just confirm, so you're looking for Tika to post the charge on the website like tomorrow, right? So this post can get out tomorrow.
And probably the resolution, I think, can they be in the same spot?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And then link to
They'll be
post.
draft.
And they'll be,
Proposed
yeah,
or draft.
proposed or draft, however we'd like to. I like proposed. I don't think we need to discuss too many more changes to these. We've already hammered those out, so. Okay. Moving. To the Social Services Appropriations Committee. Which. All right, we've done some homework on how, or hands.
Actually, Jamie sent me an email that night. She found an email from Judy Roberts when she was appointed to the committee. And it said who was on the committee and that they were meeting one time to review the letters. And that was my memory too. When I was on it, we met one time and we reviewed the letters and then we just chose somebody to go tell the select board what we had decided.
So this memo that we have.
That's from me.
That's from you, thank
It
you.
doesn't say that, yeah.
Okay.
So it's a combination of what Jamie told me and my memory of how it all worked. And since then, of course, the open meeting law has become the standard, so it really needs to be conducted in the format of an open meeting, so that changes it a little bit. It was just kind of the same group got together once a year and had some Christmas cookies and read the letters and made a recommendation.
And it still may be.
Well, yeah, so I mean,
Just publicly warned.
The cookies are not banned.
But this had kind of come up in the conversation as well with the energy committee as well, and considering how we might want to structure a committee, and whether or not it made sense relative to the scope of work to make it an advisory board, which wouldn't come with the same requirements. And
Oh, boy. Yeah, I guess so.
it makes the appointments a little easier as well, I believe, because they're not as structured, so that they don't have to be on a rolling appointment. You can have standing committee members or advisory board members. But it sounds like they're making. Does this still includes the scope of the public services that are going to be recommended to
That's the
town meetings? The whole
purpose,
point,
right,
yeah.
is the vetting process.
Yeah.
So that at town meeting, we can say, someone has looked at these.
Yeah.
Not a heavy lift.
No, it's just a lot of appointed positions.
Yeah, but it's an hour once a year.
Yeah, okay. Yes, Rose.
I think I mentioned this before, but one of the things that the committee was charged with in the past was finding out how many people in Calais are served by the organization and whether or not any members of Calais serve on their boards. Because they felt like that would be of interest, to the town, like if just some organization that nobody receives the services in Calais, and yet they're asking money from the town, so that was always part of it too.
But Barbara, don't you put that in the letter when you send it out to them?
You
and say-
it goes in their initial application that they do when they first get on there, but if they come back the next year, they don't have to do that. They just say, yes, we would like to ask for the same amount again. And the only thing they have to tell us is if they've dramatically changed their dollar amount they're requesting.
Chris, did you have a question?
What's the charge in this group? I mean, the title for me talks about social services working with Washington County.
The list that we vote on in the budget, pull it out and we vote on it every year. It's,
500 for this group and 2.
Yeah.
it's that whole list.
Oh, it's just looking at that list.
Yeah.
Right, at the town meeting this past year, there were folks that said we wanna make sure there's some citizen input.
Right,
Vetting the list.
yeah. So for instance, when Jim was here and talked about how much money we give to the library.
Yeah.
Yes. But in the library's about the only one that comes in separately. The rest of them just send letters.
Well, and the library is actually on the warning. It's a separate article on the warning, whereas all these others, 20 organizations.
So
are
Washington
all
County mental
combined
health
into one
getting
warning.
Yes.
$1,400 or $1,500, whatever they get.
Yeah, it would be, to establish a committee for reviewing it, and I guess it sounds like adding a layer of review that takes into consideration, how those resources are being directed to servicing community members in Calais, I guess. So it sounds to me like this, well, in addition, Chris, it's that there have been some regular requests for establishing something like that. That is a lingering to do. So do we need a resolution probably, to adopt? What?
But if you could draft them for, if that way.
I don't mind the idea of a resolution, so I'd be happy to kind of take what Ann has proposed, or pull, what not Ann's proposed, but what you've brought up and try to form a resolution out of that. And then we can consider adopting it, for the next meeting,
I can also draft.
if you have time.
I'm happy to do it too. I mean, I used to do it for a living. I used to write resolutions. It's pretty easy. I mean, if you've done a couple of hundred.
So we'll look at a resolution next time and then figure out the process for selecting people
For
from
selecting
there.
appointments, yeah, I think so. Unless we don't wanna,
Prioritize the ordinance committee and then. move
I
on
think
to
so,
this.
and the DRB, so we're gonna, I think that I'll revisit, the list that, that Will had circulated so that we can get a post out for the DRB as well. And see if we can solicit some initial applicants for the DRB.
Do we think we want that same timeline? We might interview DRB applicants on the.
I'm sure the DRB would really appreciate if we do, but it sounds like that's gonna really make for a long October 13th. 14th.
Start up.
Yeah. So I'm open to some feedback on that. That those are.
Yeah, it takes a while to interview people. Multiple.
Let's, I guess, see what the applications look like, and then you have plenty of time. Yeah.
But for this, can I just add, for the social services committee, Barbara, what's the timing? When do those letters start coming in?
I've already gotten 6.
You've already gotten some.
Yeah, because the application's been on the website all year.
Right. I'm just thinking, I mean, to avoid doing everything all at once, we could do it closer to whenever you are gonna need the list for, printing it up ahead of town meeting.
The only problem is just people's schedules during the holidays. So once you get through October, and then it's the Thanksgiving and so forth, it's hard to get people together to convene and meet.
All right, I was hoping we could defer this one, but.
And you probably could defer one meeting, maybe.
Okay.
It's just gonna make it really tight.
I have a question.
Yes.
That made me think of what gets printed in the book, the amount that they did request, or after the committee meets, they make a recommendation, or what they ask for goes in the
What's
book.
been being printed in the book is what they asked for, because we didn't have a committee.
Okay.
But what I think I heard Ann say was that once the committee meets and makes a recommendation to the select board, we put in the town report what the select board approves to go on there.
So that means the printing deadline is January, which means that committee would need to meet
With the Christmas cookies.
with Christmas cookies
Before there's.
or champagne on January
Yeah,
2nd.
And, and I mean, we don't need to do this tonight, but I mean, we could also, the committee could also like change the recommended amount, or, you know, if it's a committee that's making a recommendation.
Well, that's what I was gonna ask, are they just there to gather information and be prepared to talk about things, or they would actually recommend changes before the printing of this town report?
never did they make changes when I was there, but yes, that could be one of the things that they decide.
And usually they report at town meeting day, this is the slate, and we recommend, this one only gets this much because nobody in Calais is served or whatever.
Or we knock $25 off of each request because it was so much or something. Or somebody asked for a huge increase but couldn't justify why.
Right.
Okay. So not next meeting then. Resolution next meeting, but, okay. We'll try to find applications. We'll consider applications later in the year. Curtis Pond Dam Rehabilitation Project.
Yeah, so quickly, the last Monday, we did the first large concrete pour, and it went very well, 18 trucks, concrete trucks. And so that's actually a combination of two pours, and the next one will be next Monday. And so we're on our way. We have just today applied for an extension, timeline extension to be able to continue working into November 1st. And money wise, we're right around 50%. We spent a little under 50% on our construction budget, but a little over 50% overall. I just requisitioned the final portion of our bond loan. So now we're just gonna be drawing on our funds after this. Although tonight we need to accept the $100,000 donation from the CPA, and then there will be one more donation to cover what's remaining. Will we, as long as we can, figure out what that amount is.
So they're pouring the concrete, once it's set, they take down the forms, and then do they take out the cofferdam?
Well, the cofferdam will be near the end, so they've done the base of one half, and they're gonna do the base of the other half next Monday, and then they're going to actually bring in subcontractors to do the upper part, because it's got angles. It's not what Hebert does. So,
Yeah, bring in the angle people.
yeah, so, yeah, but it sits for, I forget how long, 10 days. Depends on how warm it is, I think it is, and then they remove the forms. But the cofferdam will be in place until, I think, mid-October.
Trying to imagine how you take a cofferdam apart without shooting all the water through it and sending all those bags of sand helter skelter.
It'll be fun.
He's done it before.
They seem to enjoy their work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good.
Slowly. Very slowly.
Careful.
I received a related, or not related to anything so far, but a dam related inquiry about the riprap removal on the downstream side of the old dam, and Larry's charged with taking that away, but I can't remember where we landed on what's happening with it.
Right now, he's gonna take it away. If there are alternative uses for it, it'll save us money if he doesn't have to haul it to.
Well, so that's the thing, I mean, that was now funding that we've likely been paid back for through FEMA money, right? So that was stuff that we're not.
No, it's a budget item, you know.
No, the original placement of it, so those stones are ideally ours to use if we can
Yes,
find a
they
way
belong to
to.
us.
I'm wondering if there might be a temporary storage arrangement that could be made down the road.
We looked at, could they go to the garage, and no one was too excited about
There's a
that.
property over on County.
Yeah, you're in trouble.
I was thinking about the property on County Road.
Yeah, but
Lily's house. Put him in front of Lily's house, right off the edge of the road.
Yeah, please,
Good idea.
Barbara, we've had a couple of meetings. Boom to the East Calais Dam. I mean, it was a. Certainly, we've agreed to pay for having them removed, but at the moment, it's our material that FEMA paid for, and if we can find a way to keep it in town. Originally, we were thinking that like there could be some sort of barter for its value to reduce costs, but that's understandably hard for the contractor to commit to, but if we can find a way to store that in town.
I believe we have time, because I don't think he's gonna remove it till the spring.
Okay.
There's a few last items, like the landscaping part of it. That won't be done till the spring.
Okay. Well, then we'll have, continue to have time to discuss maybe what's happening on the county road then. Yeah. Yet another cost benefit analysis. Riprap storage. That's right. Great, well, thank
Grind them
you.
up and make them into gravel?
I just wanted. I mean, I think part of the problem with that stuff is that it's really hard on trucks to transport. So finding somebody to transport it and then finding somebody who's willing to sell it to you when you need it, is hard. So having a local source of it, could be nice as we're looking at culvert reconstruction projects, et cetera, et cetera. And it was a valid inquiry that was raised, so I was just trying to keep that top of mind. That's all I have though for that, other than needing to have a conversation about, I guess, accepting a donation. So do we need to approve the acceptance of it, or authorize an individual, I guess, to approve?
Either one.
No, I think it's just a motion to approve.
Is the source of this money?
It's the CPA
Yeah, and their source was just donations?
donation.
This is the loan.
No,
half
this
of
is the loan.
Oh, this is the loan.
And we wanted to delay it.
Yeah.
Until we needed it.
Yeah, I remember that. I see.
CPA Curtis Pond Association.
So they've called it a loan. I didn't realize that. Okay.
This
Well,
is
there
the-
is a loan, it's different from the donation,
I know.
right?
Yeah, they're donating this money they borrowed to the town.
Yeah.
Correct.
So, yeah, either one.
So it's just a motion to accept the donation from the Curtis Pond Association for the amount of $1,000, which is, or I'm sorry. A lot of travel, a lot of travel. $100,000 to be used for the purpose of paying expenses related to the Curtis Pond Dam Rehabilitation Project.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Curtis Pond Dam Association. Excuse me. And moving on to reports. Tegan, do you, sorry?
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I want to go back, I'm sorry about this, but speaking of a lot of travel, I have that we skipped over approving the board orders. Did we skip over that by mistake at the very beginning?
No.
No,
we approved them.
Okay, all right. Sorry.
Thanks for checking.
No, thanks for checking.
I was like, hey, we didn't do that.
We haven't signed
It was
it.
very quick.
We have not signed
Okay,
them though.
very Yeah.
Yeah, it starts circulating.
Tegan, did you have any reports that throw
I mean,
in?
I went to the conference, it was great, had a wonderful time, I learned a lot, I took a boatload of notes, I haven't even started bothering Barbara with half of them yet. Also looking forward to town fair, Chris and Kari and I are going on October 2nd, the
Great.
LCT's big day, that should be also very informative, very helpful. Town office has been lots of tax bills, lots of notarizations, lots of calls about ballots, since the election's coming, everyone is suddenly asking about their ballots. And so we're fielding a lot of calls about that, and I mailed out the first ballots today to international folks and some other things, so. Election stuff is cranking, we're gonna get the election notebooks out in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, nice, busy pace.
Thanks, you. Kari?
So, tax collection season is going well, and I want to give Barbara a big appreciation. Barbara single-handedly millions of dollars. Millions. Millions. So, and our coffers are pretty full at the moment, but we are gonna owe the school district a very large payment in 20 days. So next time we meet, you'll see that. There's financial reports in the, it's still early on, it's a little hard to say exactly that there's trends. One thing of note is our chloride budget we're well over budget. And, I'm not exactly sure why that is. Chloride, it's $5,000 a shipment, and we've just been applying it, very steadily in the past, 6 weeks or so. But it's really important when.
It's super dry. It's been
Yeah,
really
yeah.
acutely dry for
Yeah,
the last.
Fire danger is high, no burn permits, the same.
Crew is busy completing the grant and aid work. We have until the 30th. And once that's complete, we'll submit for reimbursement. It'll be a pretty significant reimbursement that we'll be getting from the state for that. Unclear when we're gonna see more FEMA money. We were assigned our FEMA coordinator, it's the same person that we've been working with, so it's great. And it's just been a pretty intense period of time. The one curveball that was mentioned earlier is the MERC grant. So originally, when we were, so remember, this is a multi-stage process, and we had the implementation, and we had 2 assessments done, one for this building, one for the office. The renovated parts don't need really anything. These buildings are very tight, but we were always very clear that we were hoping that we could get some energy improvements to the upstairs of this building. And initially, we were told that the criteria for selecting which towns would be eligible is this computation of energy burden in town. I don't really understand what that is. I haven't really looked into it. But initially, Calais did not qualify for whatever the benchmark was. But then last week, at the beginning of the week, we were told, oh, anybody can apply for this.
Right.
And the application is due this Thursday. So we've just been scrambling to pull this together. I've got numbers from John McCullough has been really helpful. Because it doesn't have to be super detailed, it's sort of rough estimates. And what we want to do is basically finish off the upstairs of this, so building envelope would be insulation in the walls and in the attic. And then, connecting to the existing heating system, it's all stubbed up and ready to go. We'll need to rewire, there's the application's at about $105,000 right now for everything. And I'm gonna meet with Sam Lash, remember Sam Lash, I'm meeting with her tomorrow. Cause she's a real dynamo, she just wants us to get the money and it's gonna go through the application with us and hopefully give us some pointers. But we'll get that in. So anyway, it's a pretty straightforward thing, but it's just like so rushed.
Thanks for doing
Yeah, so fingers crossed. That's really all I've got.
I would still hope that somehow if we got that, we could figure out a way to use it to also dampen the sound. Do something to the ceiling. I couldn't quite figure out how to make it work together.
Up there?
Well, no, the sound in here.
Here.
So thank you for bringing that up. So I did more research on insulating panels and so forth. And when I talked to John McCullough about it, he said, it's fine, it's all fixed, we've taken care of it. And I said, I still hear echo and reverb in here and find it hard to understand. And he said, nothing else can be done. So I'd like the select board's feedback on that. Would you like more acoustical work to be done in here? Because I've done the research to find it, but I kind of got shut down by John McCullough saying nothing else needs to be done, we've handled it.
I think feedback has to come from people who are experiencing the problem.
Yeah.
Cause if you're not, I mean, to me, it sounds fine, so I need to hear it from, how many people are bothered by it right now. Anyway, if we had lots of money to spend, I'd put in one of those ceilings that absorb the sound, but I doubt we can call that insulation.
Or just looked into other options already.
Yeah.
There are a couple of different solutions. There are like wood panels that you can get that are more geometric in shape. And I wonder if you could just get them in a certain, where the voices are coming from, for the majority as opposed to just the whole room, but.
We found a less expensive wall.
Yeah, it's just a very dense foam that you could just cover with a fabric. So if that's something that the select board's open to, I'm happy to present it when you come meet with them to do an agenda planning or something and get some figures and turn it into Tegan for fiscal year 26 budget.
That sounds good. Let's go with that.
Okay.
Let's take a look at those options.
Okay.
At the next agenda planning, and find a time to work it into the schedule.
So we'll get a real sense of the acoustics on October the 4th. We have our town meet and greet to see how, because I remember last year's meet and greet, it was hard to understand.
That's right, it was.
With 40 people in here, it wasn't even 30, maybe 30 people. So you're saying it sounds fine to you. Who do you want me to check with? Just like I know Larry Bush.
Yeah, if you want to check in with some of the other committees that meet in here, I think that would still be helpful.
It's happened.
Yeah.
It's been very hard for her.
Okay, good, thank you.
As far as the Shedby Calais, I don't have much to report right now, unless anybody has any specific questions.
I take it we haven't heard any report then. Is that right?
So we filed a motion for judgment, and there was not a formal response submitted by the other party. So we have now also, proposed a judgment to the court and have not heard from them, but, do anticipate to hear from them either, this week or next. So I imagine we may have, more to take into consideration, at the October meeting. Optimistically, I guess. But that's all I've got so far.
Oh, one item of note, we will deliver the decision of the DRB. The town had applied.
Oh,
for
yes.
conditional use for those stormwater projects and they
Approved, great.
Did they put any conditions on it other than?
I don't think so. I haven't really read it.
What did the town apply for a permit for?
The conditional use permit, for.
The construction and observation wells.
Those stormwater projects underneath cows.
Oh. Okay, thanks.
With that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Oh, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No.
Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you.
That was fun.
That was.